Good morning. This is the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. This is our Wednesday, December 7th agenda. I would generally like to start for a roll call, but I think I lost a commissioner. Oh, there he is. Okay, now we have commissioners present. Why don't we start with the roll call? You're muted, Ms. Amuro.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Ackerman?
Here.
Commissioner Bogue? Commissioner Cross?
Present.
Commissioner McGowan?
Here.
Commissioner Mesmer?
Here.
Commissioner Oath? Commissioner Robbins?
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 out of 7 commissioners present today.
Great. Good to see everybody. Welcome back to our general meeting. We have a lengthy agenda before us today, and so we will just roll right into it. We start with any commissioner comments from anyone relevant to workings of commission. All right, seeing none, we move to a consent agenda. We have 3 pooling matters on the consent agenda. We also have 2 recommended enforcement orders. Does anyone have questions with regard to consent? Commissioner McGowan?
Oh,
You're muted, Commissioner McGowan.
I apologize because I don't remember which issue it was. It's an operator where the original enforcement was $300 and some thousand. They're actually going to pay $50 and have to come into compliance. And part of it was an issue around ability to pay. And I just wanted to make sure that staff feels that with the inability to pay the enforcement, the violation amount, that they feel confident that the operator can actually make their corrective actions. And I can't remember which one it was. There's been a lot to read this week.
There has been a lot to read. I think that may have been the KTM matter. Mr. Boudreau? Whichever enforcement officer is involved with this one, if you could unmute, we'd love to hear from you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. My apologies for the mute. Thank you for the question, Commissioner McGowan. The situation with this operator originally was that this was a bond claim from a non-responsive operator. In the process of working this case up, we came into contact with Mr. Kenny Vincent, who is the owner of the company. I think he recently bought out his 2 partners, had an infusion of cash to bring these wells back online. And so after reviewing the application for inability to pay, staff had determined that it's, that they did have an inability to pay, and that imposing such a large penalty would make it difficult for them to complete the corrective actions. So the way we went about it was to create a 1-year compliance plan during which they can come into compliance and then hopefully remain as an operator in the future. So, that was kind of how we arrived at the decision to put them as a inability to pay situation and create a compliance plan so that they would have enough cash on hand to be able to do the corrective actions. And of course, there's always an eye towards avoiding wells ending up on the orphan well list. So our thinking is the corrective actions that they complete between now and a year from now, assuming the worst, which we don't want to assume, but assuming the worst, whatever actions they're able to complete between now and a year from now would be less that the orphan well team has to do, assuming the worst, and all of this ends up on the orphan well list.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boudreau. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Is it AAG Boudreau?
It is, yes, ma'am.
Okay, further questions for anything on consent or the 2 recommended orders? Thank you, AAG Bordeaux, for the explanation. Seeing no further questions, do we have a motion to approve consent?
So moved. Second.
Motion Commissioner Cross, second Commissioner Ackerman to approve consent. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So approved. All right. Next on our agenda is the main event for today. That is docket 2102-00012. It is a comprehensive area plan proposal by PDC Energy. The order of play here is going to be some opening procedural remarks from me, followed by public comment. We have about 30-ish public commenters that have signed up. And then we would hear from Weld County, the relevant local government for at least some of the proposed wells, followed by a presentation from PDC Energy, and then commissioner deliberations, questions, etc. The opening procedural matters are twofold. One, wanted to remind everybody that the commissioners attended a open house on this proposed comprehensive area plan. That was in early October. Fortuitously, we were had a meeting up in that area, and so we dropped by. Nothing, we just basically went around the tables and listened in as well, but I didn't want that to be on the record. Secondly, each commissioner attended a site visit to the proposed locations with an employee from PDC Energy. That occurred sometime over the course of the last several weeks. Those were half-a-day visits from commissioners to be able to get an on-the-ground understanding of the proposed sites. There was no substantive discussions between commissioners, other than that's the proposed site and those are potentially the alternative locations. But that gives the commissioners a individualized understanding of the proposed locations for the comprehensive area plan proposal before us. I believe that takes care of procedural matters. Would ask AG Davenport if he had anything further, or if I appropriately disclosed said procedural matters, and if there's anything further at this point before we move forward.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have anything further right now.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, with that, we will move into the public comment portion of the proceeding. I would note that we had, I think, 32 some public commenters that have signed up to provide public comment. Would note for everybody that each public commenter will receive 3 minutes. We will have a timer that will be on the screen to assist you in understanding the parameters of the time frame within which to provide your public comment. We'd ask everybody to speak within their respective 3 minutes because we've got a lot of folks to get through and we want to give everybody the fair shake in terms of time. I would also note that we have written public comment that has been submitted into the file. We had, I think, 70 public comments in written format, and the commissioners have all reviewed the written public comment as part of our preparations for today's hearing. So with that, and I'm going to have hearings manager Amaro and hearings officer Elias Thomas to help us out as well. We will get started. The first, and we're just going in order of sign up. The first 3 are Karen Artell, Jason Ryder, and William Francis. So if we could identify those, at least Mr. Artell to begin, and then get Mr. Ryder on deck and Mr. Francis ready. Those are the first 3 public commenters.
Okay, I'll get started. My name is Karen Artell. I live in Larimer County. The Guanella CAP consists of 466 wells on 22 locations. PDC will develop the CAP over 10 years. The wells have 25 to 29-year lifespan. The CAP will emit greenhouse gases, ozone precursors, and toxins until 2059. Will the CAP be approved despite the ozone non-attainment area being reclassified to severe ozone non-attainment? High ozone levels negatively affect our health, especially for young children, the elderly, and those with pre-existing respiratory conditions. Oil and gas emissions are the predominant contributor to the North Front Range high ozone levels. VOCs and NOx are carried on prevailing winds west from Weld County and the DJ Basin up against the foothills, leading to high ozone levels in Larimer County. We not only bear the burden of the number of continued permit approvals in Weld County, but Weld County has more than 10,000 producing wells, more than 4,000 shut-in wells, more than 2,000 temporarily abandoned wells, 175 wells waiting on completion, and 711 actively drilling. This year, we had 46 ozone action alert days and 35 days of ozone levels above the 2015 standard of 70 ppb. And Colorado is not projecting compliance with the 2015 standard by 2024. Oil and gas operators submit Form 2Bs with their OGDPs and CAP applications, listing projected emissions. These are additional emissions despite best management practices claimed by the operators. In October 2022 presentation to the COGCC, Alan Freed and others reported that 73 to 83% of methane, a potent greenhouse gas, in the DJ Basin is associated with oil and gas operations. Weld County residents should know that the Platteville Atmospheric Observatory monitor in Weld County has some of the highest ozone levels in the non-attainment area. And what is the National Air Toxic Assessment for Weld County? PDC listing the Cancer Risk and Respiratory Hazard Index for Colorado as a whole, Region 8 in the US, is not helpful in understanding the risk to Weld County and Larimer County residents. Will the COGCC acknowledge the continued burden we in Larimer County are forced to endure from Weld County oil and gas emissions? Please don't approve this cap. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. We now will hear from Jason Rader.
Sorry, I was muted. Good morning. I am Jason Ryder. I'm here on behalf of Trinity Lutheran Church and School. I'm a proud member of the Greeley area, and I've been in the area since 1990. I just wanted to make sure that you know that our congregation is in highly support of this CAP project and the benefits that it would be for our community and our members. We have many members that are working in the oil and gas field, and many members that work in our community that will benefit from all the workers and them spending their money in our community, going to the grocery stores, just everything that all those workers will do in our community. And our church has a school as well, and there's many parents that have students there, and they work in the oil and gas field. They'll benefit greatly from this. Our church as well will benefit economically from this CAP project, and it may increase our congregation as well. And I am also a father of 3, and my kids go to that school. And I used to be a oil and gas producer for extraction oil and gas, so I understand how safe and how clean they can produce this oil and gas without very many emissions at all. And I understand that it's all going to be in the pipelines, and it's only in very small footprint and on a small property here and there. They're going to plug and abandon all the old wells, and then farmers can use that land too. it's very good for all of us involved. My family and my friends all live in this community as well. I personally want to support this as much as I can. I'm very happy that this plan is in place and hopefully you'll approve it. Just want to make sure you know that many of our congregation at Trinity Lutheran Church and School are here to support this as well. And I thank you for your time, and you can move forward to the next person. Thank you.
Mr. Ryder, before you leave, I had a quick question. Do you live, or is the church within the boundaries of the comprehensive area plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I live in that area as well, and our church has mineral rights.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We
Thank
do
you.
appreciate your taking time off and providing public comment. For our public commenters, we look forward to hearing from everyone. If you want, it would also be helpful if you could preface your comments with whether you or your family reside within the comprehensive area plan boundaries or not. Not that it ultimately adds to or takes away, but it does provide additional perspective for us as we listen to all the public commenters. All right, we will now hear from William Francis.
Hi, my name is William Francis. I do not live within the CAP boundaries, but I am an interested party, and my company Incline Energy owns assets within the Guanella CAP. I'd first like to start off and just give my support to PDC and what they're doing as a prudent operator in the basin, and would also like to state to all of those who are worried about any sort of emissions coming out of wells in Weld County that you should be cognizant that there's no better way and no safer way to lower emissions than by allowing horizontal development to come in a clean and safe manner, as what PDC is proposing here, so that we could clean up these vertical wells that are light out on the farmland and that are in some instances 150, 250 feet away from these people's houses and have facilities that are 30, 40 years old. And so if you're concerned about emissions creeping over into Larimer County, I would proffer that you should actually be in favor of this horizontal development. On the wider spectrum, in my experience of the past decade, having partnered with PDC and seen them develop hundreds of wells that we've had an interest in, I have yet to find one instance in which they have lacked integrity and haven't gone above and beyond to be the safest, most prudent operator in the DJ Basin. I couldn't think of a better operator that can stand up in this Guanella CAP and support the community and do right by this local stakeholders than PDC Energy. And obviously very much in favor of them and this project. I would further like to comment on, when looking at why we're here and what happened with SB 181 and why that bill got passed. The sole intent of that bill was to provide local control over communities having a say and control over what they wanted to do with their resource base, whether that mean not to drill or to drill in a prudent manner. And in this particular case, I feel like PDC has gone above and beyond with Gilchrist, Milliken, LaSalle, Evans, Greeley, Weld County, and the hundreds of owners that they've reached out to and that we've actually talked with. And there is no one actually living in these communities that does not want this project to move forward. And I would hope that the commissioners keep it keen of mind as to why we're actually here, and that we should be listening to the local stakeholders and grant deference there. Thank you. And that's all I have.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
I'm going to get this right sometime today. Thank you, Mr. Francis. Appreciate you taking time this morning to provide your perspective to us. We now will hear from Ann Johnson.
All right, thank you. It takes a while to be promoted to panelist. Thank you for understanding the delay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony. On behalf of the City of Evans, we're honored to lend our support to the comprehensive area plan being sought by PDC. The mayor and interim city manager provided a letter to the commission dated November 23rd, 2022. I am the Community Development Director for the City of Evans. My role is to oversee all future development in the city and how it impacts other properties and our future growth potential. PDC has operated in our community for many years. They have an office in our city with over 260 employees, and we count many of their employees as residents of our community. The City of Evans understands that CAPs are designed to offer that big picture look at oil and gas development with an increased focus on environmental protection, as well as looking at the impact of their development on the future growth potential for the City of Evans. PDC is proposing a focused approach to reducing their existing footprints, collaborating with Weld County and communities within the CAP area. A fundamental element to making CAPs work is the preliminary siting approval inclusive of local community input. Who better to provide this input in the future development than communities like the City of Evans? Siting can help provide assurance not only for our operators, but also local authority as well. We have had the opportunity to review draft plans, participated in pre-submittal meetings with COGCC, PDC, Weld County, and representatives from some of our neighboring communities. We've had meetings here at the City of Evans, including with COGCC and the Department of Parks and Wildlife. We attended the WOGLA hearing on November 10th, provided testimony there. We've heard of PDC's commitments to the city as well as the area. We have found PDC to be respectful stewards of the land and focus minimizing their impact and footprint on the city. We have an IGA with Weld County. We also have enacted 1041 powers, and all oil and gas development in Evans will go through that 1041 process with Weld County as well. Our fire department and other officials have also been participants and have gone on tours. So with the few seconds I have left, I just want you all to know that PDC has been an active participant, has sought local input in this local decision making for what is best for our community in the future. And we are very respectful and happy with the level of participation that PDC has provided to us in making an impact for our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Quick question. The City of Evans, if my recollection is correct, is a proximate local government as opposed to a relevant local government. The distinction being is that you are near proposed locations, but not a approval authority. Am I correct there?
We do have one of the locations is within the city's current annexed boundary. So one of the sites will be going through a local review that is going to be processed through the Weld County WOGLA process. But we have an intergovernmental agreement with Weld County to do so.
Right. And if I recall, the city purposefully entered into that IGA so that you can use Weld County's oil and gas department to sort of process that. Is that right?
Exactly. They have extreme expertise that a small community like Evans does not have. And so we wanted to utilize that expertise for making sure that the project would be reviewed from all aspects to make sure it was the best for the City of Evans.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent. And I think that's a good collaborative use of the municipal power. So good job to the city. And thank you for taking time this morning and providing the comments. We also did receive that written letter and we've all reviewed it. I think Commissioner McGowan has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you. I was going to call you Miss Evans, Ms. Johnson, for being here today. I'm not sure that you're going to be around later, so I wanted to hopefully maybe take advantage of the fact that you are now and ask whether or not Evans has planned development around the Oxford site, and if you've worked with PDC to make sure that that gets developed first, or if you're planning on moving houses closer to it. I don't know if you're prepared to address that, but it's one of the questions I had.
Sure. Actually, this is a great opportunity, Commissioner. So one of the previous sites for the Oxford was actually in another location. And after talking with PDC, the previous location was in an area where the landowner was thinking about doing some non-residential development. And it was in an area that where the floodplain and the floodway were also increasing. So PDC listened and took our local impact to site it in a different area that is going to be much more beneficial to the developing area. So they took into account the future plans of the city when they changed that Oxford location. So we're very pleased with that outcome.
Thank you for that. Sorry, and I'm not sure I quite understood. What are the plans for development around that Oxford site looking forward?
Sure. In our long range plans, it is that Oxford location does contain some area that will be open space in the future. There could also be some limited industrial and commercial development in that particular location per our newly adopted master plan.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. A great question, Commissioner. Glad that you were able to launch that to get that perspective from Evans, because she may not be here the whole day. That was a good point. Okay, next we have Heidi Leithwood, and I think she's dialed in under 350 Colorado. But
oh yeah, that's me.
Great,
Hello.
we can hear you.
Thanks, and hello,
now we can see
Commissioner.
you.
I talked with hearing manager Amaro about the ability to share my screen. I just have a couple map slides that I'd like to share with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, and we won't start the timer until you're ready to go. So take your time.
Thanks. The cat management here too. Okay, it says that I can't share the screen because it's already being shared by you for the timer.
Oh, okay. So what we'll need to do is have Miss Amaro unshare the timer, and then we'll just need you to sort of kind of keep track of your own time. I'll perhaps like wave at you when 3 minutes are up, but now you should be able to share.
Okay, thanks. I'm pretty sure I'll be under 3 minutes, but please cut me off if I go over.
I won't cut you off. I'll just suggest that you wrap up. How's that?
Sounds good. Okay. Hopefully I did that right. Can you see the screen there?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I did some map overlays of the layer from your site, and I outlined the Guanella cap here myself with that blue pen, so you can see when we layer it. On the left, you'll see the disproportionately impacted communities as defined by the statute in Colorado from the EnviroScreen map. And you'll see how that overlays with the Guanella cap when I do this animation here. So you can see that there are some DIC communities. That bright blue is a community that falls under more than one category. Here we are going to see the EPA air toxics cancer risk as soon as I do the animation. And you can see that within the Guanella cap, we have an area that's above the 90th percentile for cancer risk, and that's Colorado percentiles. And then here we'll see the levels of particulate matter. And again, we have an area that's above 90th percentile and one that's above 95th percentile as well. And then the air toxics respiratory hazards index And oh, these three slides are from the EPA EJ screen. So that's where that data came from. And again, here we have an area that's above the 90th percentile, and then a small area that's above the 95th percentile. And I just want to talk about why that's relevant. And because in my opinion, and according to the common sense and the EPA definition of cumulative impacts, you can't look at the emissions from Guanella as though they're contributing to an area that has zero pollution. You have to consider how they add to what is already there, and that they're also impacting communities that Colorado law now says we need to reduce pollution in. I'd also like to add that 3 of the 22 locations are 0 feet away from water features, including a stream, a freshwater pond, and a wetland. There are 261 permitted water wells within the cap, and one is 0 feet away from one of the locations. There's 168 homes within 2,000 feet, a distance at which a Colorado study shows that there are known health hazards. And then if we look at carbon dioxide equivalent emissions over an expected 30-year life of wells, it will emit 1.5 tons of CO2 equivalent, and that comes from the operator's data. They only provide data up to 15 years, so I extended that out. I acknowledge that technical practices have improved to reduce emissions per well, but approving 466 wells that will produce for decades in an area that already has high health risks and contains disproportionately impacted communities, and when we are in an existential climate crisis, just doesn't make any sense. And thanks for your time and considering my comments. And that's all I've got for today.
Thank you very much. And we want to thank you for spending time putting together the graphics and providing that to us. That's helpful information for us to have before us. So thank you, Ms. Heathwood. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, now we have Roy Stepp. No, I'm sorry, Ken Ponslow, P-O-N-C-E-L-O-W, followed by Roy Stepp.
Hello, Mr. Chair. This is Hearing Officer Thomas. I'm trying to promote Mr. Ponslow at the moment, so give me one.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Ponslow, if you unmute, you should be able to speak.
Mr. Thomas, Mr. Ponslow has raised his hand.
Yes, I'm trying to promote him to a panelist, but it is not promoting him. However, I have given him the authority to speak without being promoted. He'll just need to unmute.
So Mr. Ponslow, if you can hear us, we just need you to unmute your device. Commissioners, help me. If he's on a phone, is it star something something? Anybody recall?
Star 6.
Star 6.
Mr. Ponslow, try star 6 on your phone. Maybe he unraised his hand. All right, why don't we move to Mr. Stepp, followed by Kay Moore, and then we will continue to try to figure out how to hear from Mr. Ponslow. Mr. Stepp, do you want to speak?
Yes, good morning. My name is Roy Stepp. Both my wife and myself were born here in Weld County many years ago, and with the exception of some of my time.
I think you can either raise your hand or put in the chat that you figured it out. Okay. Hold on.
So, Mr. Ponslow, hold on. We're going to hear from Mr. Stepp first, then we'll hear from you, okay? Okay, Mr. Stepp, go ahead. You can get
Okay.
started again.
Again, good morning. My name is Roy Stepp. Both myself and my wife Carol were born here in Weld County many years ago, and with the exception of some of my time in the military, have resided in Weld County since. In fact, we have lived in our current home here on County Road 44 for over 50 years. In that time, we have seen the financial benefits provided by the oil and gas industry, including to the landowners / mineral rights owners, taxes to school districts and fire protection districts, the business owners, and by the many jobs created and maintained by the oil and gas industry. We are very secure with the existing and future oil and gas exploration and production here in our area by PDC, and have never been adversely affected by any of the exploration and or production activity. And that's all I have, and thank you.
You're muted, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Stepp, thank you. I assume that your home is located within the boundaries of the comprehensive area plan?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking time this morning to speak with us. We do really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we now will hear from Mr. Ponslow.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. Sorry about that. This is Ken Ponslow. I live on County Road 42. We are a quarter mile from where one of the well sites will be. We'll be the closest person to it. So we are within the comprehensive plan. I have absolutely no problems with that well going in. I think will be a great thing. I also said as the chair on the High Plains Library District Board, about 60 to 70% of our budget comes from oil and gas and the revenues that they produce and the taxes that we get. Because of that, we're putting in the Link Library downtown Greeley. That's about a $33 million project. It'll be a library and innovation center. Took over the old Greeley Tribune building and we're remodeling that. That will open in May. We also added another 10,000 square feet to the Erie Library, completed a library in Kersey, are planning now for working on a library in Meade, are working on a library in Grover, and have been able to do all of that because of oil and gas. We've also assisted because we're a hybrid library system, so we assist other libraries within the county. So the new library going in Fort Lupton is funded with oil and gas. The Grover Library, which is another one that we're completing, is going in with oil and gas money. We've assisted on the remodel in the Alt Library, the Eaton Library, the Hudson Library, the Platteville Library, the Keensburg Library, the Lockbury Library, and the Briggsdale Library. And so because of oil and gas, we're able to bring a whole lot of services to the citizens within Weld County, a lot of innovation. We work closely with the homeless in Weld County because of that money. We're also able to work very closely with our workforce development and help develop more jobs within Weld County for the people here, and with our homeless coalition and with the immigrant population to be able to help them have services as well. And so oil and gas provides all of those services for us. It's important up here in Weld County that we have that so that we can continue to provide great services for our patrons and for the people who live here. So that's all I've got. I'll go ahead and give up the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ponslow. From your testimony, and I'm not familiar with the High Plains Library District, but it sounds like that's a kind of an umbrella library district that serves most of the unincorporated Weld and incorporated Weld County. Is that right?
Yes, it does. We are a hybrid library, so we have branches and then we have member libraries. We serve the entire of Weld County, with the exception of Windsor and Severance. And we also go into part of Larimer County and into Boulder County. And so we provide library services for all those folks, for many of those folks as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for taking time out of your day to present to us on this proposal. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cross has a question. Mr. Ponzo, don't leave.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ponzo, for your testimony. And I just wanted to confirm, you said you were within a quarter mile of one of the proposed sites?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
The
Thank
one
you.
at 42 and 25 and a half.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Moving down the list, next is Kay Moore, followed by Chuck Raymer. Ms. Moore, if you want to unmute yourself, we see that you are a panelist. And if you're on a phone, try *6.
Okay. How about now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I am Kay Moore and good morning. My family is the Hungerberg family that live on 44 and 35 in LaSalle. I am speaking on behalf of my brother, David Hungenberg. We recently lost my mom at 89 years old 3 weeks ago, who actually owned the farm, and now we're taking over the farm for her. Her name was Barbara Hungenberg. She was very involved with PDC and appreciated everything that they did as far as the communication with her. She was excited to have this project getting started. She lived here since 1974, I believe, is when our family moved down here. My brother farms right next door to her, and we are close to the steps who just spoke previously before me. As far as PDC goes, I've been in education for many years, and I think they've been a great asset to our community. I think they're very environmentally friendly, and they let us know exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and they communicate well with us. So on behalf of my brother and I, who are now taking over her farm, we are very in favor of this project moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Moore, and condolences on the passing of your mother. We
Thank
appreciate you taking time today and providing us with your family's perspective on the proposal. It is very helpful information.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. All right, we now will hear from Mr. Chuck Raymer. We see that you're with us, Mr. Raymer. If you want to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me now?
We can. Yep.
Okay. I'm a third generation Weld County resident, and I live in Greeley. My cousin owns a family farm in the Capital District south of LaSalle. And I want to thank you, the commission, for their transparency and their great efforts in seeking feedback. I'm a realtor and a developer, and I would like to emphasize that oil and gas rights are just another type of property rights. You can lease your home, you can lease your ground, you can lease your oil and gas subsurface rights. all property owners have that right, including people in town with directional drilling have leased the ground under their 8,000 square foot lot. This is a bundle of rights that goes with owning property, and it should not be denied to any property owner. PDC has an excellent reputation, and the scope and magnitude of this plan they've put together is phenomenal. It's record breaking. People said the oil and gas industry would dry up when the 2,000-foot setback was implemented. They've proven that it hasn't. You know, the newest regulations include so many restrictions on wellhead emissions that PDC is on top of, and wellhead emissions are at all-time lows. It makes sense to take the oil and gas out of Colorado. Colorado only produces 3.7% of the energy in America. It makes way more sense to pull it out of here and use it here than it does to import oil from OPEC or Russia or Venezuela. It is creating jobs. It is providing a short-term fossil fuel until we can get converted to other fuels. One of the projects we have on our farm is a 23-acre solar farm that we've signed a lease to. I'm getting ready to do solar on my own personal 5 acres. So all that's coming, but if we don't do it here, we're going to keep buying it somewhere else. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer, for taking time out of your day to present to us. We do appreciate it. We now will hear from Robert Eck, followed by Carol Stepp.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Robert Eck, and I reside actually in Arvada, Colorado. I'd like to thank you for your time today and considering my comments. Although I do live in Arvada, I'm also a property owner within the area of the Guanella CAP. My property lies within the municipal boundary of the city of Greeley, and more specifically at the southeast corner of 35th Avenue and 29th Street, where I own approximately 45 acres of vacant undeveloped land, which is totally infill property. It's developed all around. Within the boundaries of my property, PDC Energy has at the present time 3 existing wells and an existing tank battery on the surface of the property. Through these existing operations, I've become acquainted with PDC Energy and their personal representatives and have found them to be a very respectful and responsible operator in this area. In fact, I believe they're one of the best operators that I've had the pleasure doing business with over many years of my interfacing with mineral owners and operators. I've visited personally with PDC representatives with regard to this application before you today, and feel that my property interests and concerns have been heard and accounted for in their application. I have no doubt that PDC will be a good partner to me and my neighboring property owners. I also feel that their more comprehensive approach to this permit application will benefit the greater area within the boundaries of the Guanella CAP and clean up many older existing wells and facilities such as those on my property. I'm hopeful that this type of application can also be a model for other operators to follow, because I think it's a pretty responsible approach. As a Coloradan, I believe our state and the counties within it benefit greatly from having oil and gas operations. As a landowner and a partner to oil and gas operations, I'm in support of responsible applications like the one PDC has before you today. I'd like to see this move forward, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. And thank you for your support, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Eck. We appreciate you being with us and for providing the perspective, kind of the unique perspective of someone who is a property owner with some of the older locations that are potentially going to get plugged and abandoned through this process.
Yes.
All right. Continuing down the list, next is Carol Stepp, followed by Tom Hamblin, and then Tom Zook.
Mr. Chair, we just tried to promote Carol Stepp and it looks like they dropped out of the Zoom, which happens sometimes when you have to leave and join as a panelist, but I do not see them at this point.
I see.
They are there.
Stephouse is with us. Miss Stepp, if you want to unmute, there you go. Say something.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay. My name is Carol Stepp, and you've heard the statement from my husband that was read a little earlier. I can only state that I agree with everything in his statement. We live within a quarter of a mile of the proposed large gas development by PDC and have absolutely no concerns about this project. I have been in contact with a lot of our neighbors and in the area, and they have not heard it. I've not heard anything negative about it. Along with my husband, we have lived in our home here on Weld County Road 44 for 50 years plus. And I agree with what he said, and that's kind of what I have to say. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for, again, having both you and your husband testify to us today. We do appreciate that. All right, we're now looking to Tom Hamblin, followed by Tom Zuck.
Hello, Mr. Chair. We're unable to locate Mr. Hamblin at this time. So if he is in the attendee list, if he could raise his hand. In the meantime, we will elevate Tom Zuck.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Tom Zook. I'm a landowner within the Guanella Cap project, specifically on County Road 39 south of LaSalle. I'm within 2,000 feet of both the Bierstadt and the Augusta pads. I've been in contact with PDC since 2021 about this project. All of their communications has been very forthcoming. I support this plan. I hope that you will grant them the approval. Where I live is recognized as the disproportionate impacted communities. But I would say if we zoom out quite a bit, you can see that outside of the boundaries of the United States of America, there's a lot more DICs out there, relatively speaking. And I would say if we have not done anything to reduce the demand of this type of energy on a worldwide perspective. So if we're exporting it out, we're just impacting other communities that are further dispossessed than we are. I believe that through the work that this commission has done and the operators in the state of Colorado, we produce some of the cleanest energy in the entire world. And I think that we should continue to lead the way and carry the torch in that effort. It's a huge problem that the entire world is going to face in the coming years as we transition our main supply of energy. But we can't do that in one fell swoop. So I think we should continue to be leaders in responsibly sourcing our energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zook. We appreciate you taking time out of the day and presenting to us. It is helpful. All right, I think we still are unable to find Mr. Hamblin. So moving down the list, Matt Concaldi, I may have that completely butchered, apologize. Followed by Emily Tilton.
Can you hear me now?
Hey, Matt. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Well, good morning, commissioners. As you know, my name is Matt Concialdi. I'm a division chief for the Platteville-Gilchrist Fire Protection District. So thank you for allowing me to speak today. Over the years, Platteville-Gilchrist Fire and PDC have built a strong partnership that is focused on solid communication and collaboration for emergency response planning and on-site coordination during oil field incidents. The working partnership developed due to joint trainings and offering of classroom and on-site tours during various stages of oil and gas production so that our crews can efficiently and effectively manage any incident we respond to. PDC's commitment for safety has resulted in a better action planning process that helps ensure our fire crews, their site workers, and production sites are safer. What is most impressive about PDC's commitment for community involvement is that PDC strives to make the communities they operate in safer. On an annual basis, less than 1% of our responses are to an oil and gas site. However, through PDC's assistance, Platteville-Gilchrist Fire was able to purchase an educational smokehouse trailer. Over the last 2 years, we've been able to reach over 1,000 children and adults teaching home fire safety, and that number will only increase every year we use it. PDC has also assisted, excuse me, just getting over a cold here. PDC has also assisted the district in purchasing gas detection, monitoring, and safety devices that provided our crews the ability to investigate, detect, and safely clear residential and commercial structures for harmful gases that can lead to explosions or silent fatalities like carbon monoxide. Having these tools gives our community members peace of mind. Earlier this year, PDC Energy assisted us in purchasing a drone to be used as a special incident command tool, allowing our crews enhanced visualization to spot hazards or safety concerns not seen from the ground. Most recently, our Gilchrist Fire Station Community Open House event, PDC partnered with us and our local elementary schools to distribute to all second graders new bikes and helmets. Not only purchasing the bikes, but PDC also built the bikes and provided representatives to help the second graders learn how to ride the bikes on our cone course. For the Platteville-Gilchrist Fire Protection District, our surrounding community, PDC Energy invests itself as a valued community partner, and we are grateful for their involvement in our area. We as a fire department are able to serve our community better because of PDC Energy and their presence in our district. I greatly appreciate your time.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Concialdi, was your fire department involved in working on kind of like emergency preparedness plans for any of this development?
Yes, our fire prevention specialist was involved with it.
Okay, and can you provide us some perspective on how that, is that a pretty good working relationship with PDC?
We have a great working relationship. Anything that we might ask to be modified, they do right away. They take our feedback. They want our suggestions first and foremost. And so that the plans are clearly defined and we understand them. And in any question, we can always go out and do site visits. And we're gearing up for some site tours in some of the areas that they have, just to get more familiar with them. In the past, we've operated with what is your water source and making sure we have a proper connection to their water source. And also, every single one of us chiefs gets the plans once they are put into place so that we know where any explosions are, where any of the deck guns are at, all the generators, anything that we need to know we have access to. And so it's been a very collaborative process throughout their site planning.
And that actually begs another question, and I'm sorry, we don't normally have a ton of Q&A with people, but we don't often get a fire chief to come testify to us, so I'm taking advantage of this. So that you just spoke positively about kind of the pre-planning and the emergency planning. Is there follow through? This is a long development, right? And is there follow through? Do you continue to have access and as the development occurs, and is that relationship kind of the post planning, but the actual production is that relationship pretty solid as well?
It is. We rely heavy upon the communication that they provide. So if there's any modifications throughout, they make sure that they get it over to us. We take pride in the safety of our crews, and we want to make sure that they are safe operating. We've had very few oil and gas incidents. We cover 144 square miles of Weld County. And in the 5 years that I've been with the fire department, we've had very few incidents. And the times that we had, it has gone very, very smoothly. They provide a representative on site when we need it. Anytime throughout the production, they're happy for us to stop by. In fact, we recently done a training with them where they went through the different phases of production, and then we were able to go take a site tour to see anywhere from the drilling portion to taking an oil out and capping it. We've been able to see through them. So it's been a great partnership, and they're reaching out to us on a quarterly basis for some type of training for us to be involved with them so that we are familiar with them, they are familiar with us, so that when we do have an incident, even though it's infrequent, we work very, very well together with them.
Great. Thanks for letting me ask those few questions. The commission, our commission, is not necessarily involved in the emergency preparedness plans. We rely on the local fire districts and the local authorities, and it was just nice to kind of get some perspective on this operator's approach with your Platteville Fire Department. So we thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure.
All right, continuing down the list, we now have Emily Tilton, followed by Bill Jerke. Hi, Ms. Tilton. I see that you're with us if you want to unmute.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm Emily Tilton, Senior Manager of Philanthropy at the United Way of Weld County. I'm responsible for investment stakeholder developments. I've got a prepared statement in respect for our time today. The United Way of Weld County improves lives by mobilizing the caring power of our community. We focus on 5 initiatives to find and deliver solutions to the biggest community challenges in the areas of early childhood reading, youth workforce development, stable housing, aging well, and connecting Weld residents to the resources they need as quickly as possible. Together, we are building a stronger Weld County. For years, PDC Energy has been a community partner for our organization, helping not only with financial support, but also with their time. Several employees of PDC Energy are regular volunteers that we can count on. PDC has a strong corporate culture of giving back to the community. We're very proud to have Paul Rowe of PDC Energy serve on our board of directors. PDC Energy's corporate impact in Weld County has reached thousands of people in need in recent years. The United Way of Weld County is grateful to PDC Energy for their years of partnership in our community and the partnership that is still ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you taking time this morning to provide us the perspective on behalf of the United Way of Weld County.
Happy to. Thank you.
Now we will recognize Bill Jerky, maybe, not sure exactly how to pronounce the last name, followed by Barbara Krupnick Goldman.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
I'm Bill Jerky. I'm a native of Weld County. And first, I want to thank you guys for your service. It isn't easy listening to all of this. So historically, the Jerky family has been farming in the area there south of LaSalle for most of 100 years now. My dad and his brothers bought our farm back in 1945, and it's still being farmed today. For point of reference, we're the site of the Bierstadt site under Guanella. So I appreciate your tour a few weeks ago. Saw that you guys were out there, and that's you were certainly welcomed. We've been dealing with these wells for quite some time, straight wells. All I can say is if you want to go ahead and improve air quality and so on and so forth, let's get rid of the old straights that would have been put in 20, 30, and 40 years ago, and let's go to state-of-the-art horizontal wells. They're certainly dramatically better. I have served in a number of capacities. Historically, I was a legislator, chaired the House Ag and Natural Resources Committee clear back in the 90s. I also served as a Weld County Commissioner in the aughts, and certainly have a long agricultural background growing a variety of different products on our farm. We've gone along really, really well with PDC. They're a marvelous company. They've treated us well on this project, and we are happy and proud to actually be a host of a set of wells coming in the future. We think it makes so much more sense. It frees so many of our neighbors to be able to go ahead and farm undeterred without any peril out there, if you will, from having to dodge oil wells when they're out on their tractors and trucks. And so this is a far, far better way to do it. Also, the economics can't be disputed. The oil and gas industry has made Weld County largely what it is today to a large degree. We have, I can recall as a commissioner, literally receiving checks from the county and subdivisions of government totaling over $100 million from more than one producer during that time period. So it's just a marvelous symbiotic relationship between agriculture, oil and gas, and Weld County as a whole, as you've heard from many of the people that live there. Open it up to any questions you might have, and thank you for your service.
Great, thank you. Do you know the distance between your property and the Bierstadt proposed location?
We own the property that Bierstadt is located on.
Okay, so you're the
We own that farm.
Okay,
Yeah.
And then do you have vertical wells that are planned for being plugged and abandoned?
Oh, yes, about half of them are already P&A'd, with the other half to slowly follow as time goes on as we head towards eventual approval and then eventual drilling for this project.
Great.
The closest one to my house that was about 250 feet away. And,
The closest vertical?
Yeah, and it's been P&A'd already, and it was just simply no issue while we lived there and enjoyed it. It was no problem at all for us.
Great. Thank you for you and providing you and your farming family's perspective. And thank you for your service in various realms over the course of the last several decades. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we now have Barbara Krupnick Goldman.
Okay, I hope that you can hear me.
We can.
Very good. My name is Barbara Krupnick Goldman. I live in Fort Collins, and I am going to kind of take the other perspective. I'm going to ask you to deny the Guanella Comprehensive Area Plan. Although fossil fuels have been contributing to the development of industrial society, our comfortable lifestyles, we now know and have known for years that fossil fuels are heating the planet and are toxic. There are better alternatives, and there's really no excuse to continue at this time investing in energy sources that destroy the biosphere. In the past few years, we've seen an escalation in extreme weather events related to the heating of the planet. We've seen Hurricane Ian, the deadly heat in Asia and across the globe. We've seen the temperatures rising here in Colorado. We have drought. We have horrific wildfires. I'm a mother and a grandmother. I love my family and I want the best for them, as I'm sure you do for yours. We have children and grandchildren living in Greeley, Denver, and Wellington in the ozone non-attainment zone. It terrifies me to think of the future that our grandchildren are facing if we don't make the right choices now. The extraction and burning of fossil fuels is causing damage to the systems that sustain life on our planet. And the more we burn, the greater the damage. The rational solution would be to stop fossil fuel development, the new developments such as the cap that you're considering, and we actually need to draw down use of fossil fuels quickly. So I'm asking you to please deny the permit for this cap. Although the rules for considering cumulative impacts have not yet been finalized, it's pretty clear that the negative impacts of a huge project like this will be beyond acceptable levels for local air pollution, for local greenhouse gas emissions. At the very least, deny the cap and require that each well be considered individually so that the impacts can actually be better assessed. I know that lots of people have been talking about doing business with PDC and other oil and gas companies, but we can really no longer do business as usual because it's actually in the process of destroying our civilization as usual. So I'm asking you to please protect people, wildlife, and the environment, which is your responsibility to do. This is an opportunity to kind of take a new direction, to be bold and say no to the Guanella cap. So thank you for your attention and hopefully your serious consideration. Thanks.
Thank you very much for being with us and presenting your perspective. We appreciate it. We appreciate hearing from all the various perspectives that are presented to us. Commissioners, we're a little more than halfway done with public comment. It's 10:15. I suggest we take a 10-minute break, get up and stretch a little bit. Let's return at 10:26. All right, welcome back. We will continue with public comment on project 2102000012, PDC's proposed comprehensive area plan for the Guanella cap. Next, we will hear from Jennifer Cohen, followed by Janice Holloway.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for hearing me. My name's Jen Cohen. I am a resident of Colorado, and my comment today contains an analogy. So I'm a backyard beekeeper, and my hives are my responsibility to protect from predators and disease. If I do my job with the bees, I will closely watch over any deficiencies in their food and water in the environment, and I supply them with what they cannot provide for themselves due to circumstances beyond their control. So bears are predators, and they are particularly hungry. Bears are also an important part of the system. The impressive thing about the bear is that he's big, and no one messes with him. The wonderful thing about bears, unlike the bee, is that they stock up for the winter on a variety of food sources, not just honey. When a bear comes across a beehive, it will take as much as it possibly can and all at once, with a single short-term priority. The destruction of the hives is complete, and plenty of honey is wasted. Bears aren't known for their concern for the homes of bees. I think you know where I'm going with this. Eliminating bears to protect the hive is a bee's perspective. Feeding the bear as many hives as possible is the point of view of the bear. But as a beekeeper, I'm also protecting the bear from its own reflex to take as much as it can all at once, jeopardizing its own health and safety. I believe when it comes to oil and gas extraction that we can take the beekeeper's perspective. By protecting communities from disease and the massive consumption of clean water by hydraulic fracturing, we enable the oil and gas industry to live on a variety of sources. We need the oil and gas industry to transition their businesses to new and clean sources of energy. The United States has begun rapidly a massive endeavor to transition to alternative sources of energy. Low and no emission energy sources will overtake the burning of fossil fuels soon. We've already made this promise to the world. Hydraulic fracturing was the strong medicine that the country used to reduce its dependency on foreign oil. But just like any strong medicine, more is not better, and overdoing it inevitably leads to dependency. The Guanella Cap project is too much medicine. We are addicted and we need to rehabilitate. If we ignore the destruction of our clean water by the extraction process and the pollution caused by the burning of oil and gas, our promise, our children, and our beautiful country will come to a predictable end. The solution is to reject the Guanella Cap project as too much. Your future, our future, is in your hands. The decisions that this commission makes will help our country fulfill its promise and plan for a realistic energy future. Balancing carbon emissions at a pace at which the planet can remove it is smart. Scaling up technologies that produce and distribute energy without harmful emissions is smart. Conserving 3,672,702,600 gallons of clean water that the Guanella Cap would destroy otherwise is smart. We are smart and we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation and for being with us. We appreciate it. We now will hear from Janice Holloway, followed by Eric Carlson.
Hello, commissioners. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi there. You know me. I'm all about plugging the wells, but not as a trade-off for drilling more wells. I just need to say that at the top. My name is Janice Hallowell. I live on a farm in unincorporated Boulder County. And this Thanksgiving, we marked the 10-year anniversary of our daughter being diagnosed with chronic myelogenous leukemia. Now, this is a kind of leukemia, along with other blood cancers, that has been linked directly to the benzene that comes out of fracking wells. And all I have to say is that I'll have a lot to say, and I don't know how to do it all in this many minutes, but think about it. PDC is not giving bikes to children and building libraries and giving money to the fire department because they're good guys. They're doing all that stuff because it's blood money. They're going to make money off of drilling 466 wells that we don't even need. And they want to walk away with all that money, and they're counting on the people at the Lutheran Church in the town of Evans to say, oh, great, I get a library and my kid gets a bike. Well, how is that library going to suit you? And how's that bike going to work for you when your kid has leukemia, like my kid does? My kid has leukemia, 10 years of it now. And let me tell you, I had to look her straight in the eyes, just like most of you are not wanting to look me straight in the eyes right now. Thank you, Commissioner Robbins. But if you look me in the eyes, you need to know that my daughter sat there 10 years ago with a terrible diagnosis. And she said to me, Mom, am I going to die? And I had to say, we're going to try and do everything we can to prevent you from dying. And we did. Would you please do me the same service? Would you do all of us here on the Front Range the same service and say, look, if there's a chance that we can prevent more children from getting leukemia, more people from getting blood cancers, more people from getting asthma, more problems with breathing, then we'll do it instead of lining the pockets of PDC who's going to give a bike to somebody. It's insane to think that drilling 466 more wells is going to help in any kind of transition to clean energy. I'm asking you to really consider this when you hear about how they have such nice representatives and oh, PDC is so kind and oh, they're such a good community member. Well, they're not. They're making money on it. And more people are going to get leukemia. And when you have to hold your daughter in the hospital as she's saying, crying, Mama, am I going to die now? That's when you know this benzene causes this stuff and people really do need to take notice. I'm asking you to deny this drilling. We can do it another way. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chair, you're muted again.
Thanks, Commissioner McGowan. Thank you for your time and for taking time out to present to us this morning. Eric Carlson, followed by Albion Carlson.
Mr. Chair, at this time, we're unable to locate Eric Carlson. If he is in the chat, please raise your hand and we'll get you next. But we can promote Albion Carlson at this time.
Great, let's do that. And looking at their street addresses, it doesn't look like they're related. They're different Carlsons. Or not, I don't know. Albion Carlson, you're now a panelist if you want to unmute.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to apologize for my brother. He had a family emergency, Eric, and so I'm here to speak for the family today. I'd like to first thank Chairman Robbins and the Commission for providing me this opportunity to speak to you today on the approval of the PDC Guanella cap, and which I wholeheartedly support. My property is located within the cap area, just northeast of the Quandary site. I've lived here for most of my life. I was born and raised here, as were the preceding 3 generations, and my kids are currently the 5th generation out here since my great-grandfather acquired this property in 1884. We're proud to be good stewards of the land. Over the last 140 years, we've grown corn and hay and livestock and taking good care of our property. We're here to stay. The last 40 or 50 years, we've had a keen interest in developing our mineral interests. In 1984, the first well on my property was drilled, and it was drilled into the Codell Formation. Over the last 40 years, I've had the opportunity to work with a number of operators, and I've had good relations with them. They've always been respectful and done a lot of good things for us. I'd just like to say that we really do support PDC. We find them to be an upstanding, reputable company. Their public outreach was excellent. They've dealt with us, the landowners, very well. That original well was plugged and abandoned in the interest of this new project, which I think is quite an impressive project. Much fewer wells than the old way of vertical drilling. Enhanced emissions controls at the well site, hydraulic fracturing is a wonderful thing for the efficient production of minerals. The horizontal drilling, out to 2 and 3 miles is just phenomenal. I think that this is a real opportunity for the state of Colorado to join and support a futuristic option. I think that PDC has the resources and the wherewithal to produce this, and I think it's a model for the future. And I really, really hope that you will approve the Guanella Cap application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Sorry to hear about your brother. And I just want to clear the record. Your brother is Eric Carlson, is that right?
Yes, Eric is my brother.
And does Eric have property located within the conference area plant as well?
Eric's property is just to the north of my property, and I'm just northeast of the laundry site. My southeast corner of my property abuts where that location would be.
And just to clarify for the record, but Eric would also, if he had been here, he would echo sort of your comments in terms of supports.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next is Tim Gosar, followed by Nicole Maris. And on the comment sheet, Mr. Gosar indicated he may or may not speak, or he may or may not provide public comment. So I see someone named Tim has joined the panel. Let's see if he wants to speak. If you want to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me okay, commissioners?
Yes, sir, we can.
Great. Good morning, commissioners. I'm Tim Gosar, a longtime resident of Larimer County, with my dad being an oil and gas geologist for over 30 years. I'm representing my family in the Larimer Alliance for Health, Safety, and Environment this morning. Understanding how we deal with the climate crisis, recognizing and quantifying cumulative impacts of most industries and processes, including oil and gas and the Guanella Cap. Cumulative impacts include spills by oil and gas operators, of which PDC had 83 that it notified you of just this year alone up through September 21st. Air quality is another of these important cumulative impacts. The biggest contributor to Larimer County's F-grade air quality by the American Lung Association is from oil and gas, with neighboring Will County being the biggest source and location of the Guanella Cap. Recently, the Northern Front Range was downgraded to being a severe violator of air quality standards. There were 6 regions across the United States reclassified as severe, and Colorado had the second highest daily average levels of ozone. A few other noteworthy and serious cumulative impacts estimated by PDC, which we believe could turn out to be very conservative, and if so, even more damaging than the estimates below. Projected emissions during the 14 years of operation: nitrous oxide, carbon monoxide, around 10,100 tons, VOCs, 1,160 tons, methane, 649 tons, carbon dioxide, 661,000 tons, which is the equivalent of emissions from 117,000 households' electricity use for 1 year. The Larimer Alliance, along with Earthworks, using these same oil and gas OGI technology the state uses, have monitored a few oil and gas sites here in Larimer County. Oil and gas facilities leak significantly more than air. Reporting and monitoring of them is insufficient to protect public health, safety, and the environment and wildlife. A few other areas of concern regarding Guanella Cap include 168 homes within 2,000 feet, around 4,500 houses within a mile, 8 pads less than 100 feet from the nearest surface water, 11 pads less than 100 feet from wetlands, 13 pads less than 2,000 feet from permitted water wells, an enormous amount of fresh water consumed. Oil and gas uses very little recycled water. Water used in the oil and gas industry is removed and destroyed from the hydrological cycle. Water shortages persist and will continue to worsen in Colorado, so water use and allocation of it is absolutely vital. This is an unappreciated but critical cumulative impact, especially given the increased population projections moving forward for the Northern Front Range in Colorado. Natural gas and oil systems are the 4th largest contributor of greenhouse gas and largest contributor of methane. In Colorado, oil and gas contributes to ozone at a rate 1.5 times higher than cars, and Will County accounts for most of the state's oil and gas production. The state has targets of reducing emissions by 90% by 2050, but this Guanella Cap is estimated to be producing for 35 years. That if approved, would extend that harmfulness of it until 2057. The IEA and the UN Environmental Program have said we need no new oil and gas development if we are going to keep global warming under 1.5 degrees Celsius. The Guanella cap has the potential to have enormous climate impacts, including damaging air quality, harmful spills, excess water use, and the destruction of it, all very negative and serious cumulative impacts. Denying the Guanella cap proposal and any permitting of it is required under the mandates and assessment of cumulative impacts and protecting public health, safety, welfare, and the environment and wildlife resources set forth in Senate Bill 181. Thanks for your time, attention, and consideration in this matter of utmost consequence.
Thank you for being with us and presenting to us. We appreciate it. Nicole Maris, followed by Thomas Francis.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, just it takes a second to transition over. Hi, commissioners. Thank you so much for hearing from me today. My name is Nicole Maris. I don't live within the CAP area, but I am a resident of Weld County, so I'm nearby. And I'm here today asking you to refuse the Guanella cap. As the mom of 3 young boys, this project baffles and horrifies me. Colorado already suffers wildfires, drought, and extreme poor air quality. I cannot fathom a greater injustice being targeted at our children, the most helpless and vulnerable, than continuing to recklessly burn fossil fuels, knowing what the outcome will be, knowing what hardship awaits them. The economic argument for more fracking is nonsense. A report this year by the Deloitte Economic Institute shows that climate change will cost the US economy nearly $50 trillion over the next 50 years. Conversely, decarbonizing will add $3 trillion over the same time period. Further, most of the gas extracted in Colorado is exported and doesn't impact our energy costs locally. Given that, why are we expanding fracking in Colorado instead of supporting clean energy projects? We know that if we want a better future for our kids, we must decarbonize quickly. So a little about me personally. 2 of my sons were adopted out of foster care. They were both born addicted to drugs. My oldest was hospitalized with a severe case of RSV as a result of his drug exposure and neglect by his birth family. While we were lucky enough to have had these boys placed with us pretty much from birth, although my oldest came to us at 2 months, they are especially vulnerable to pollutants in the air. And in fact, my oldest has developed persistent nosebleeds since moving to Weld County, a condition commonly associated with fracking. Watching them as babies suffer the withdrawals that grown men and women literally cannot handle was the hardest thing I've ever done. The feeling of helplessness as I watched my innocent babies endure incapacitating pain was agonizing. I get the same feeling of helplessness, that pit in my stomach, as I think about what awaits them if we don't prioritize their health and future today. What more injustice can we hand these boys? Having adopted kids blurs the line between my kids and our kids, and the injustice that we do to these most vulnerable in our community. Now I stand here, not just as a resident of Weld County, but as a mother of 3 who wants the best for her kids and for all kids. This cap will not be in the best interest of the community, health-wise or economically. PDC acknowledges in their cumulative impact evaluation the emission of pollutants including nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, VOCs, methane, ethane, carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide for the duration of the cap and for 5 years after. These are powerful greenhouse gases and very dangerous chemicals. You have an opportunity today to do the right thing, to send a message to my kids and all the others in the community that you value their future and health. Please do not approve the Guanella cap. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Maris, for attending with us and providing your perspective. We appreciate it. Next, we have Thomas Francis, followed by Glenn Fritzler. Mr. Francis, I see that you're with us, but we cannot hear you.
And now, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
I would like to thank the commission for taking the time and in offering me the opportunity to speak. I am in favor of the Guanella cap project. Bit of history. I grew up farm ranch there in Weld County, attended CSU for my master's degree and worked in the solar labs with renewable energy. You'll find that most farmers are conservation-minded people. They do not want to pollute the wonderful land that provides their income. They are people that take care of the planet, not destroy it. From my studies at CSU in the solar field, I've always been interested in renewable energies. And there's no question that we need to continue investing in those, as we are investing in those. But the fact of the matter is that we use petroleum now. That's just a fact. And the fact is that we're going to be using petroleum most probably until we use nuclear, which is probably the ultimate solution to all of this energy situation. So for the duration that these wells will produce, they're going to provide a product that we absolutely will need. The wells are not making the pollution that everyone is talking about. Yes, the air quality is bad. Why? Because we drive cars. Well, that's the way it is. It's just the way it is. And we're not going to be converted to electricity for a long time. So how are we going to get the petroleum that we need to continue to maintain? There've been tremendous advances in the manner of mining the petroleum with the horizontal wells that are just fantastic. We're drilling for miles, reducing enormous amounts of pollution that were caused in the old straight vertical wells. I've been involved with a number of producers, and I just don't think you can find a better person to do this work in a cleaner, more responsible way than PDC. I've worked with a bunch of oil companies, and these boys, they are top drawer, top flight. They're going to do it right. So I encourage you to prove it. Let's let them get in and do the job as well as they do. And that's about it. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not as professional as those other guys who are on the phone. You had some guys on there that were really good. I felt a little intimidated to talk to you guys, but I hope you get my message.
Your message is received loud and clear, and it appears to me to be honest and forthright. So that is appropriate. So we thank you for taking the time and for appearing before us. We enjoy listening to all the perspectives that people bring, whether polished or from the heart. So thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn Fritzler, followed by Wells Fitzpatrick. Mr. Fritzler, we see that you're with us.
I think I got you.
Yep,
Are
you got us. We can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. My name is Glenn Fritzler. I'm a 65 years old, and I've lived on the current farm for 65 years. I was born and raised there. And first of all, I wanted to thank the commissioners for allowing us to speak today. I am the current owner of the property. When my mom and dad passed away, I inherited part of it and bought part of it. So I am a third generation farmer. I believe my son's listening, fourth generation, and fifth generation is on the way. We actually have 64 wells that are planned to be drilled on my farm if this plan is approved, and which we hope it is. I remember as a young boy, my dad taking me out in his pickup truck, and we were watching some of the first vertical wells being drilled. And any issues that we've ever had have always been adjusted or taken care of without any problems whatsoever. I did hear the fire chief from the Platteville Fire Department reference the Gilchrist Fire Department, and we are roughly a mile away from that fire department. back in 2012, Colorado experienced a drought. And it was the first year that farmers in my area were not allowed to use their domestic wells because of some regulation changes. That really changed how I viewed and tried to make me feel how are we going to continue? I never want to go through that again, because half of our farm, actually more than half of our farm, dried up because we weren't able to irrigate it. So we had a solar company approach us, and we agreed to put in a 10-acre solar well, or a solar farm. They weren't able to get the permitting, and the contract I had with them expired. And then I did, in the meantime, I did a contract with PDC, which has been a phenomenal company. They've answered any questions, addressed any concerns we've had. And my thought is that I hear people talking, we don't need this, but we do need energy. That's the absolutely truth. And I think, in my opinion, I like to be in control of things. And I would much rather have these wells here where you people will be in control, and instead of giving that control to somewhere else, and then we have to import that energy. So I believe it's to everybody's interest to approve this. It's going to be done safely, and we've got new technology, and I think it's a project that will, when we look back at it in generations, we'll be happy that we did it.
Great, thank you. We have a question, Mr. Fritzler, don't go away. Commissioner Cross.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Fritzler. Do you know the name of the site near that will be drilled on your farm, or can you tell us kind of the area of the cap boundaries so we get an idea?
It is on section 22. I do not know the name of it. I apologize. It's going to be just east of County Road 31 and just south of County Road 44.
So I believe that's the Redoubt Federal. Okay, thank you. That's just what I wanted to double check. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you very much. Wells Fitzpatrick.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Wonderful. Sorry about that. Good morning. My name's Wells Fitzpatrick. I'm a mineral owner in Colorado. I don't live within the cap boundaries. First off, I want to thank the commission for the opportunity to speak. And I'd like to touch on 3 items quickly. I know we're getting towards the end, so I promise I won't even take the 3 minutes. I want to hit on the oil that comes out of Colorado, the gas, and then finally PDC. The fact is that Colorado provides some of the cleanest oil in the world. We've seen from the energy crisis in Europe that we're simply not facing the choice between 100% clean energy and oil. We're facing the option between clean energy and oil from places like Colorado, or dirty oil from places abroad and runaway inflation. Colorado should be immensely proud of the fact that every year it displaces some 150 million barrels of crude that would flow into the Kremlin's coffers. Colorado is the safest, cleanest option to supply the world, and again, they should be proud of that. On the gas side, the EIA credits natural gas with decoupling our country's CO2 emissions and economic growth for the first time in history. It's no coincidence that our CO2 emissions from energy peaked in the mid-aughts right before the shale revolution, because the shale revolution and the gas that came out of that ground caused it. Colorado should also be immensely proud that its gas has contributed to that dramatic reduction. Both of those constituents are a force for good in the world. PDC's done the right thing from day one. Their communications have been clear and consistent. They've met or exceeded the details outlined in SB 181. They've comprehensively addressed health, safety, welfare, wildlife, environmental issues. They've routinely been praised by counties and municipalities, including some folks that were on today, Colorado, you set a very appropriate high bar. And it seems to me that PDC's cleared it. So to summarize, I'd reiterate that Colorado's oil and gas is the cleanest, safest option in the world today. And I'd humbly urge the commission to approve the cap.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fitzpatrick, for being with us and providing us with your perspective. Now we'll hear from, let's see, Jamie Geisen, followed by Lauren Petrie and Giselle Arroyo.
Hello, my name is Jamie Geeson. I am a Colorado native and I live in Thornton. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the Guanella Cap. This project proposes 466 wells. These wells do not operate in isolation to the world around them. Over 20 of the locations would be near water sources. 2 of the locations would be within critical wildlife habitats. And while all of these wells are within Weld County, the proximity to Larimer County and to the city of Loveland in particular is significant and hasn't been stressed or considered nearly enough. There are over 4,000 homes within 1 mile of the proposed site. The negative effects of these wells don't stop at property boundaries. They don't just affect the property owners where the wells are located. They affect everyone, and everyone should be considered, including the people who didn't even know to be here today. The link between climate change, wildfires, and health conditions due to oil and gas production is well established. This commission has a responsibility to all citizens to provide a healthy place to live. We are already behind on our own mandated targets to reduce emissions. The consequences of missing these targets aren't abstract. They equal not only quality of life, but life itself. In conclusion, with respect to landowners, this is a large project, both in the number of wells and in geographic area, and needs to be viewed from a wide angle. I've heard earlier today that PDC supports the community through various donations and providing emergency plan. That's all good. But PDC could use their enormous profits to make their wells safer. They could work on compliance, thereby reducing wildfires, or they could choose to help the community transition to a safer, viable energy source. They are choosing not to. It's worth everyone here questioning what's behind their choice. We deserve better. We deserve for this commission to ask the hard questions and not to get sidetracked by a PR campaign. We are here to talk about 466 new wells and their effects, both short-term and long-term. I am asking you to deny the Guanella Cap. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Geisen, for being with us and providing your information and perspective. We appreciate it. We now will hear from Lauren Petrie, followed by Giselle Arroyo and Doug Glasser.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Lauren Petrie. I'm with Colorado Rising. I know that there aren't any facts or figures that I can present here that are going to change your minds. You've already read, seen, heard, and you've been presented with all of the statistics that you could possibly need to oppose this project. It's pretty insulting, though, to sit here and listen to how wonderful this cap is going to be for the environment and how it's going to be such a boon for the economy. First of all, the cap is sitting in the middle of a severe non-attainment zone for ozone. So how is it that the same area that is ground zero for fracking is also ground zero for ozone non-attainment? I need somebody to explain that to me. Secondly, this meeting started with a discussion about an operator that doesn't have the money to take care of their existing wells. So the sentiment among the commission became, let's keep our fingers crossed and hope they don't end up on the state's orphaned wells list. But I thought the industry was also bringing in tons of money and making us all rich, right? They have all these profits. And if that's the case, why is it that they so conveniently never seem to have money to clean up after themselves when it comes down to it? This commission also discussed taking site location tours. So congratulations, you went out and you looked at a vacant lot that would become a giant fracking pad. But have you toured the impacted neighborhoods that are downwind and outside of the cap boundaries? Have you toured those areas? You know, the places where kids are having sudden nosebleeds all day, every day, and where grown adults are suddenly being diagnosed with asthma. Have you talked to those folks? If you haven't noticed a pretty common theme here, I'll point it out. It's that all the people that are in favor of these caps seem to have a massive financial stake in the game, or they're receiving some kind of financial benefit. We're all adults here, and I think we could all see that money wins every single time. We know how this is going to end. You all are going to approve the cap. Nobody's going to be surprised because that's what you're here to do. You're here to color between the lines, tick the boxes, regardless of the catastrophic effects that these caps are actually causing. So I just want to say in advance, congratulations to the commission for your contributions here. Congratulations to your role in approving countless tons of carbon dioxide and methane that will worsen the climate crisis, certainly increase the frequency and severity of our wildfires. Congrats for approving countless tons of VOCs that will further degrade our air quality. And congratulations for approving the permanent destruction of billions of gallons of fresh water that will certainly worsen drought conditions for the entire state. Congratulations, Commission. Job well done.
Thank you, Ms. Petrie, for being with us and providing your perspective. We now will hear from Giselle Arroyo. Followed by Doug Glasser. Good morning.
Hello, can you all hear me? Okay,
We can.
wonderful. Hi, my name is Giselle Arroyo. I am from a historically marginalized community, and I have seen firsthand the impacts from the fossil fuel industry on my community. Family members suffering from nosebleeds, asthma, and other respiratory and cardiovascular issues. Evidence shows that marginalized communities are more likely to live near oil and gas operations. So honestly, it does not shock me that these communities will be impacted once again by the Guanella Comprehensive Area Plan. I think it goes without saying, but I do not support this plan. While I do not live within the cap boundary, I live just south of it. 466 wells will impact all surrounding communities. Air pollution still makes its way down here and impacts the most vulnerable people like myself. I represent my family with Colorado Rising, but my absolute most important job is being a mother. I am also 22 weeks pregnant, and just the fact that I am Indigenous Mexican Ecuadorian, I am 2 to 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes. And climate threats, such as burning oil and gas, only exacerbate the pre-existing maternal health crisis in the US. Health research has shown for years that toxic emissions from well sites greatly increase respiratory, sinus, cardiovascular, neurological diseases, birth defects, preterm birth, low birth weight, stillbirths, and childhood leukemia. These impacts are greatest for children, pregnant mothers, the elderly, and those who have existing medical conditions. Fossil fuel emissions from the oil and gas industry are killing our children. No amount of money will make up for that fact. And multi-billion-dollar companies have no issue paying off their debts when they are found in the wrong, but that will not help when the most vulnerable continue to suffer. What is best for our communities and our future is that this plan is denied. Over 500 people agree and have signed the Colorado Rising petition to deny this CAP. According to the American Lung Association, we also rank 7th worst in the nation for ozone, and we cannot deny that there is no correlation between that and the burning of oil and gas. I ask the commissioners to kindly consider all I have mentioned and please listen to the scientists. I'd like to share this quote from senior NOAA scientist Peter Tanz. The amount of carbon in the atmosphere reached 421 parts per million in 22, the highest concentration in human history. We have known about this for half a century and have failed to do anything meaningful about it. Let us do something meaningful about it and consider the well-being of the people of Colorado and especially our future generations. Because failure to combat climate change poses a major health threat to the entire population. And addressing these underlying problems by reducing greenhouse gas emissions should be a global priority. Let us follow in Los Angeles' footsteps and ban new oil wells and projects such as this one. I understand that transitioning Colorado to 100% renewable energy by 2040 is a top priority, so may we put our differences we have and continue working towards the just transition we are already heading into. The health of our future generations depend on our actions today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for taking time and presenting to us your perspective. We appreciate it. We now will look for Doug Glasser, followed by Ruth Hund. Mr. Glasser, you're with us, but you're muted. You just unmuted ever so slightly and then muted again.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, my name's Douglas Glasser, and I've listened to a few of these interviews just prior to this one that I'm doing. And I'm an ordinary layman type person, ordinary blue collar worker, and I own property within the boundaries of this proposed site for fracking, I guess, in oil wells. And I'm not afraid of this in any way. I have no qualms about supporting PDC in their effort to produce more oil and gas for our economy that's absolutely essential for our lives. And I strongly oppose some of the eco-freak testimony that has been proposed by people that are afraid of progress and all kinds of things. And so I suggest we support the United States in our effort to produce energy for the world that we need to combat people like Putin and some of these Russian oil things and some of their efforts to take over the world with their ideas of killing people, killing civilians. And I think that I have not made a prepared statement, but I think that we need to support PDC and listen to people like Steve Wells and Sheriff Reams and try to get along, but try to make support for progress rather than being all kind of communist and all kinds of people that don't support progress in the oil industry. So I really haven't got a prepared statement, but I support PDC 100%. I'm within the boundaries of this proposed event, and I think it's going to help people all around. So I'm not a technocrat or anything like that, but I support this PDC proposal. And I thank the commission for allowing me to share. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Mr. Glasser, do you know if your property is located near one of the 22 proposed locations or not?
As far as I know, I'm within 500 feet of the exact center of the whole operation. And it doesn't bother me a bit.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate you being with us and providing your perspective.
I don't think 500, maybe 500 feet is not accurate, but within a half a mile.
Okay. Thank you very much. The last person that signed up to testify is Ruth Hund, H-U-N-D.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, just a second. Let me get my, first of all, I'd like to thank the commission for giving me the time to testify. My name is Ruth Hund and I'm I live in the city of Golden, Colorado. The core of COGCC's mission is to regulate the development and production of the natural resources of oil and gas in the state of Colorado in a manner that protects public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. PDC Energy is a fast-growing, hugely profitable company that has doubled its quarterly free-flowing cash in the last year. For 2022, they expect to clear $1.5 billion in free-flowing cash and plan to distribute $1 billion to its shareholders. They impressively donate generously to communities monetarily and with volunteer hours. PDC Energy is trying to further increase its profits, which is how good capitalism works. And please know that I support capitalism. It's a good thing. Unfortunately, this pursuit is at the expense of the health and welfare of the citizens and the environment of Colorado, not just of Weld County. Air pollutants and their products, namely ozone, do not know project boundaries. Colorado's health and welfare are the very things the commission was sworn to protect. I and many others would argue that we need to stop the development of all new oil and gas resources due to the existential threat of climate change. This is not anti-progress. This is progress. We need to come up with we need to progress towards new green technologies. However, even without that argument, these 466 wells should not be drilled in Weld County in particular. Weld County is part of the US EPA severe non-attainment area for ground level ozone. If you are not sick, asthmatic, athletic, very young, or old, this may not mean a lot to you. Right now, I fall into 4 and usually 3 of these categories. When ozone is high, it hurts to breathe. I'm lucky. I can afford my inhaler and I have a home with an evaporative cooler so I can stay indoors. Others, the disenfranchised of our society, those whom we are morally most bound to protect, do not have this luxury. Sometimes it just hurts to breathe. Sometimes a severe asthma attack triggered by ozone is fatal. We already have a problem. We need to remedy it, not exacerbate it. The release of over 20,000 tons of ozone-producing pollutants over the next 14 years is moving us in the wrong direction. This particular backyard is already full of pollutants. I'm not just saying not in my backyard. I'm imploring you to uphold your sworn duty and protect the health of the citizens of this state. We are already in big trouble. We cannot add to it. I do not understand why COGCC is considering any new wells, much less 466, while the area is in severe non-attainment. PDC Energy seems to be a good, conscientious company. I hope their conscientiousness is why they are growing so quickly. I do not understand why they've applied for 466 wells in a severe non-attainment area. They will also do just fine without this project. They are currently executing another massive project in the Delaware Basin of Texas that is exceeding production expectations by 1.75 times. Please reject the permit application of the Guanella Cap project.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hund, for providing your perspective and taking time out of your day to be with us. We appreciate it. Hearings manager, Commissioner Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, I know that a couple weren't able to make it, but I'm wondering if we ever found Mr. Hamblin as well.
Actually, that's exactly where I was going. The only person, there were 2 people who signed up, Mr. Cross, who had a family emergency and his brother testified for him, and then Mr. Hamblin, and Hamblen. Hearings manager Amaro, can you confirm that we've looked and we've not been able to find Mr. Hamblin?
We have looked, Mr. Chair, and we have not located him throughout the meeting. We were looking for him.
Okay.
He is not.
Very good. Sometimes that happens, folks, or sign up and then they're not able to present. Next on the agenda, commissioners, is a short presentation from Larimer County, followed by a short presentation from Weld County. Let's take 5 minutes and get those presentations teed up and return at 11:22. All right, welcome. I think it is time to reconvene. I'm seeing commissioners start to materialize, and I see we have Attorney Matt Sura with us, who will be representing Larimer County. I would suggest So with that, Mr. Sura, you are recognized. Your screen share is recognized and welcome.
Well, thank you so much. As you said, Matt Sura, Special Counsel for Larimer County. Today, I'm going to be discussing cumulative air quality impacts on Larimer County, concerns about Guanella Cap, cumulative impact analysis specifically to ozone, and then proposed mitigation measures. This is a map of the ozone non-attainment area. Southern Larimer County has been suffering the effects of high ozone for decades. The chart to the right shows that last year, the highest ozone readings were well above both the 2015 National Ambient Air Quality Standards of 70 parts per billion and the 2008 standard of 75 parts per billion ozone at every monitoring station within Larimer County, topping out at 85 parts per billion on the Western Fort Collins monitoring station. This is a VOC chart from the Ozone State Implementation Plan that is going to be voted on by the Air Quality Control Commission next week. Ozone is formed, as we all know, when volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides combine with sunlight to form O3 or ozone. High ozone levels are harmful to human health, most harmful to the very young and oldest in our population, as well as to anyone with a respiratory condition such as asthma. As you can see, while there have been brought down dramatically since 2016, area sources from the oil and gas industry are the largest sources of volatile organic compounds. The largest oil and gas area sources include pneumatic valves, fugitive emissions, and engines on well pads. Moving to NOx, starting in 2023, there's a sharp decline in nitrogen oxides, as you can see from our cars, and an increase from oil and gas. As automobiles get cleaner, including the addition of electric cars, large oil and gas engines used for drilling and fracking continue, and their use is even expected to increase. These pre-production emissions are the largest area sources of nitrogen oxides. Regulated point sources are also mostly from the oil and gas sector. Given this map, you would imagine that the highest ozone reading would be in Greeley. However, Larimer County often has higher ozone readings than Weld County due to the upslope flows that are well documented and described in published research. The Front Range Atmospheric Photochemistry Experiment, or FRAPE, that was published in 2017 determined that oil and gas emissions are the largest contributor to local ozone production in the northern foothills. The FRAPE concluded that the elevated ozone levels along the Larimer County foothills were the result of mountain valley winds resulting from thermally driven terrain-induced diurnal flow patterns. And what that means is essentially ozone forms when the wind isn't blowing. During still summer days, hot temperatures create upslope winds that move pollutant-laden air from the east to the west and into the mountains. And as the temperatures drop during the evening, that same pollutant-laden air comes back down onto the valley floor and moves downslope back to continue to create more, pick up more pollution, and then the cycle continues. The COGCC map shows the outline of the Guanella Comprehensive Area Plan immediately east of Larimer County. This will certainly impact Larimer County's air quality. Larimer County, to start, Larimer County supports comprehensive planning for oil and gas development and appreciates that PDC is committed to tankless hydrocarbon storage, electrification of drilling operations, 3-phase midstream gathering, and their commitment to plug and reclaim 576 existing vertical wells. But Larimer County is most concerned about the impact this proposal on ozone levels. Larimer County residents, and specifically Larimer Alliance, brought this issue to the attention of the county commissioners that the per well emissions were particularly high for the Guanella cap compared to other caps that have been recently approved. It is also far higher than the state implementation plan emission estimates of 3.3 tons of nitrogen oxides per well. Boulder and Larimer County were trying to understand why the Guanella cap showed 21 tons of nitrogen oxides per well of pre-production emissions, and the SIP only showed 3.3 tons of nitrogen oxides per well. After many discussions with the Air Pollution Control Division, we found out that their estimates were just too low by a factor of 2. It's not 3.3 tons per well for pre-production emissions, it's 6. And PDC's estimates were too high by either 4 or 10, depending on the way that they do their calculations. As a result of the Air Pollution Control Division's calculation error, they have had to withdraw the 2008 SIP and will have to run new modeling to determine if the state can attain federal ozone limits. The pre-production emissions from drilling and fracking engines doubled, meaning that the oil and gas sector is an even larger contributor to our ozone problem. Just to show that that's all pre-production emissions. Larimer County requests the following. We would like you to mitigate cumulative impacts by either requiring the use of electric drilling and hydraulic fracking engines or placing some timing restrictions on those activities. Now, PDC is already committed to electric grid powered drilling rigs. But if they cannot also use grid powered hydraulic fracturing engines, completions should occur outside of the peak ozone season from June through August. We also ask you to give CDPHE direction to engage earlier and require more information from operators for adequate analysis of cumulative impacts. And the Air Pollution Control Division can and should model cap level decisions to determine their impact on ozone levels. And that can be requested by the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission. My last slide is simply, this is the estimated drilling schedule provided by PDC, not something that they are tied to, just an estimate. But it shows that by this estimate, 121 wells on 8 locations are planned to be drilled and hydraulically fractured during peak ozone season. Because PDC is using electric drilling rigs, that drilling will not contribute to our ozone problem. However, hydraulic fracturing does. We are merely requesting that hydraulic fracturing occur outside of peak ozone season. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks for the presentation. Commissioners, are there questions for Mr. Sura? Commissioner Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sura, for that presentation. I know that you have had some conversations. What kind of responses have you gotten from PDC about the proposed timing limitations on the fracking, if not electric?
Well, so certainly would love to hear their response to that. In discussing those, they raised issues that are very familiar to all of us, that it's of the interest of landowners to have PDC or any operator come in and out of their property as quickly as possible. And the possibility that they would be able to do the drilling, but then have to delay hydraulic fracturing or completion operations was a concern. However, I think that concern is slight compared to, and is certainly offset by the good that could occur by having those emissions happen outside of peak ozone season.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Sura.
Commissioner McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sura, for the presentation. I've been thinking also about the difference between the equipment that's being proposed for drilling versus completions. Do you or have you talked to PDC about what the estimated reduction in NOx would be if they used electric, or I know that batteries have been used for some completions activities, which I think are pretty close in emissions to electric drilling. And I'm wondering if you had that conversation with them.
Again, I encourage you to press PDC on this issue, but my understanding is that the electricity needs of hydraulic fracturing engines is beyond what can be supplied currently. If they were to bring in those batteries, as you suggest, I think that they could bring down their nitrogen oxide levels to 0. And that is currently what they are estimating for electric drilling rigs, is that they're going to be 0 nitrogen oxide emissions. And that certainly makes that a better proposal. Going that next step farther and eliminating those nitrogen oxides, what they're estimating as either 2 tons per well completions or 5 tons per well, is still a lot when you're looking at 466 wells, particularly if that drilling and completion operation is happening during peak ozone season from June through August. if they could find a way to electrify that completion operations or move those completion operations outside of that peak ozone season, that's what we're asking for.
Other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Sir. Appreciate you being with us and for the presentation. If you could email the PowerPoint to Ms. Larson, we'll make sure it gets in the file if it's not already there.
I'll do that right now. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, next up is Jason Maxey from Weld County for a 20-minute presentation.
Commissioners, good morning. It is appearing my video is not starting. I'm trying to do that right now. If you will hold on for just a second.
Just on our end, we see you're impaneled, we can hear you fine, and we see your slides, but we do not see you.
Yeah, it's not, for some reason, when I start sharing my screen, I apologize. It minimizes my Zoom window and it's not allowing me to start my video like I normally do when I'm in front of you. So my apologies. I think that I will probably just go ahead and move forward if that's all right with you, and just chat with you. And then maybe when I'm done, I can minimize the presentation and turn my video on at that time.
That sounds good. We'll have it on for the Q&A.
All right. Let's see. I just found another option here. Let me see. It's still not letting me. Okay. I'll move forward. Well, thank you, commissioners. As always, number one, thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing the robust dialogue, both from agency perspectives as well as the public. My name is Jason Maxey. I am the director for the Weld County Oil and Gas Energy Department. As a side note, I would mention that I believe my staff member, my teammate, Kelly Holiday, is online as well. If the commission does have any in-depth technical type of questions regarding the process or some details that I might not be able to answer, then I'm sure Ms. Holiday is available to come online and answer those, as she handled the permit from start to finish for Weld County and is obviously more intimately familiar with a lot of the details since she handled that from start to end. But it's my pleasure to be here in front of you today to go over the Weld County process at a high level. This is a little different than what I normally do in front of you as well. We did prepare a slide deck that I will go through along with my talking points. And as always, whether it's during the presentation or afterwards, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you all may have. I'd like to start off with the kind of a general timeline of the process here for Weld County. And due to the complex nature of this CDP in particular, I want to make known for the record that PDC started the conversations with Weld County as well as other various agencies at least close to a year before the formal process shown here on the screen began. There were multiple conversations on how the process between Weld County and the state specifically would align and how we'd go about venturing into this new territory involving a CDP, which spans multiple municipal boundaries and is close to many proximate entities and a couple relevant entities other than Weld County. The timeline you see on the screen outlines our 1041 WOCLA process after it officially began with the pre-application submittal that PDC made to Weld County. We held our pre-application meeting on April 4th of 2022. And going through the timeline, the next step for notice from PDC that they intended to submit a formal application was done in July. The formal application was received in mid-August of 2022. After that happened, PDC did hold multiple in-person community meetings. Commissioner Robbins, you mentioned that in some of your opening remarks. Those dates are on the screen, and I'm sure PDC will get into more of the details of those community meetings. But it is worthwhile to note that out of the 3 in-person meetings and the 1 virtual meeting, Weld County staff was present at each of these meetings. And I know you all attended one as well, I believe the one in Greeley on September 8th. But Weld County staff went to every single one of these, including the virtual one. And we appreciate PDC holding those meetings for community input. The Guanella CDP was heard and subsequently approved by the 1041 WOCLA hearing officer on Thursday, November 10th. The final order, as you all know, we do with all of our final orders for WOCLAs. The final order for this CDP was placed on record with the clerk and recorder and published in the Greeley Tribune, which creates a vested property right per Weld County rules and state statutes. Focusing on the pre-application meeting, the basic outline of the CDP or the CAP is in front of you right now. And I wanted to really focus on this process. As you all know, I'm very proud of this pre-application process that we do here at Weld County and that your staff participates in. The attendees are listed on the left-hand side of the screen, but I want to put a number to that that's a little different than the list. There were 47 attendees in total to this meeting, which included the various groups or authorities on the screen. The boundary of the CDP encompasses over 33,000 acres or approximately 52 square miles of mineral acreage, and again, pulls in multiple municipal boundaries. This is different than any other CDP that Weld County has processed here in the past. What we can see on the screen and what PDC, I'm sure we'll go into more detail on, is we see one jurisdiction being the city of Greeley in the north, in yellow, the city of Evans being further here to the east, city of LaSalle being in purple to the south and east of Evans. Continuing clockwise, we have the town of Gilcrest, which is in the southern portion of the CDP. And then a little bit separated from each other, but in this kind of brown color, is the town of Milliken. So a little different than others that you all have even considered, in the fact that we had never had one that had this many municipalities that were involved. PDC does plan to develop the minerals from 22 individual oil and gas locations. 19 of those are within unincorporated Weld County. 2 on the north side are within the city of Greeley. And as you already heard from the city of Evans, 1 is within the city of Evans municipal boundaries. I'd like to go in just a little bit greater detail on the pre-app meeting that was held on April 4th. It was a full day event where every party who you see on the screen came to the table, literally in person. Some of them chose to participate remote, but regardless, they were at the table for a very robust discussion regarding the overall CDP plan and the siting for each individual oil and gas location. While Weld County has hosted numerous pre-application meetings, and you all know that, again, there has never been one quite like this. Our pre-application meetings are usually held 100% virtually to accommodate schedules, and they last about 45 minutes to an hour. But this meeting was held in person and with a virtual option, and as I mentioned, lasted a full day. There was representation and participation in the discussion from each of the agencies listed on the screen. And just as I anticipate, today with your review and PDC's presentations for our discussion, some of the conversations for the locations were somewhat brief, as the particular location in question was able to be cited in a manner that truly avoided impacts, while other locations with more receptors maybe garnered lengthier conversations. During the pre-app meeting, COGCC staff spoke to their mission that operators first avoid impacts, secondly, minimize, and third, mitigate when avoiding or minimizing are not possible. Through the thorough alternative siting discussions that we had that day at the pre-app meeting, it was easy to see the thoughtful and cautious planning that PDC had put into their Guanella CDP with that intent to avoid and minimize impacts. But as far as Weld County staff goes, what truly speaks volumes to us is that PDC was still willing to listen and take further action to minimize and mitigate concerns expressed that day from the relevant and impacted agencies. The request for the pre-app meeting actually indicated 25 individual oil and gas locations. But based on the discussions and concerns raised at the meeting that day, PDC accepted the challenge and came back to the table with their formal application that had reduced the surface disturbance to just 22 individual locations while still fully developing the intended minerals. PDC was able to completely eliminate the only location to have a residential building unit within 500 feet. They were able to amend operational timelines to avoid a local community's concerns regarding future residential development. They were able to consolidate a well pad and production facility into a single disturbance area to avoid impacting CPW high priority habitat, as well as combining 2 well pads into a single location. I've said it before, commissioners, and I'll say it again, the Weld County pre-application process works. This is a shining example of that. The next slide, I want to highlight the referral agencies. Now, this is a different view of the entities that were involved with our actual application referral process and the agencies that got direct communication that we asked to provide comment. This is pursuant to Weld County Code. You all know that, you've heard me say that before. And all of these agencies listed on the screen received a direct referral request. The majority of the referral agencies did in fact participate. Now, there were a couple exceptions. The ones that show up in red here did not submit a formal response to Weld County. However, that does not mean that they were not involved in the process. A shining example of that, again, goes back to our pre-application meeting. And I will go ahead and call out the city of Greeley, not in a bad way. But the fact that they showed up in red and did not respond to our referral comment is not necessarily a negative. They were fully engaged and had in-person participation at the pre-application meeting. And the fact that they participated in the discussion and the fact that they are moving forward with their own individual land use process for the 2 locations within the city of Greeley does not necessarily mean that a lack of a referral response is a bad thing. To me, it means the process worked. Their concerns have been discussed. Their process is being evaluated and it's going through their process with the city. And so therefore, a lack of response is not necessarily a negative. I'll just want to say that again. But as you all know, we send out referrals to any of the fire districts that are within the boundary of the CDP in particular, as well as the school districts and other entities, even such as ditches or reservoir companies. Notice of hearing for the 1041 WOGLA CDP hearing that we held on the November 10th was sent to over 300 property owners and also published in the Greeley Tribune. On the screen is an example of the letter that went out from Weld County staff. This notice was sent to all property owners within 2,000 feet of each of the 22 individual proposed oil and gas locations. And as you all know, we send notice to property owners, which is inclusive of building unit owners. And you all know that our definition of building units also include commercial or industrial type uses that are occupied during normal working hours. So our notice goes above and beyond the notification requirements that are currently at the COGCC level, and 300 plus property owners were engaged. Now, I'm sure you'll hear more from PDC regarding how many notices they sent out, which of course is in addition to Weld County notices, as well as the community meetings that were held that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to pause on this slide for a minute. It's a very simple slide. You can see that no applications for intervention were received through the Weld County process. And that's important to note. But along with no formal intervention requests, I think it's important on this slide to talk about other items of public engagement or lack thereof. Number 1, from the PDC notification, we did receive a handful of calls with questions regarding items such as pipeline infrastructure, equipment proposed on a certain location, or even just to notify Weld County that there might need to be an update to their mailing address. One question regarded proximity to their home, and the commentary from this caller that they were happy to know that older wells which were in closer proximity would be P&A'd with this new proposed development. Basically, the responses we received, which I need to mention also, Weld County contact information was of course on all of the notices that went out from PDC. They have to list their contact information and they have to list the relevant local government's contact information. So that's why we received calls from their notice. But it is safe to say from the calls and questions that we did receive, which again were just a very few handful to the amount of notices they sent out, 0 concerns were conveyed to Weld County from the public. A second item to note is that from the notice that we sent out for the hearing that happened on November 10th, Weld County received 0 calls or emails regarding that notice of hearing. The third thing to make note of is that we received 0 negative responses from any referral agencies that you all saw listed a few seconds ago on another slide. And the last thing to acknowledge is at our hearing on November 10th, 0 public attended that hearing to provide comment. Only one referral agency attended to provide comment, which was the City of Evans. And if Ms. Johnson is still online, I appreciate her input here, as well as the input to our process. And you heard her testify to her participation in the Weld County process on November 10th. Weld County Comprehensive Development Plans. With Weld County CDPs, operators present an application identifying specific surface locations within an overall development area. There are many aspects of the plan that are uniform throughout the CDP area, and the operator commits to those uniform details at this CDP stage of approval, securing their permitting rights to the individual locations contained therein. The items listed on the screen right now are just a small example of the items that are included with the application that not only staff, but the hearing officer ultimately evaluates for the CDP as a whole, but that also do apply for each of the individual locations within the proposed development area. So these items are common things that can apply to every location that can be considered at that time. A couple examples I wanted to rise to the surface here and talk about. The first one would be haul routes. As you know, Weld County is a very active participant in talking about haul routes and access permits for individual WOGLAs, let alone a large development plan such as this. Weld County Public Works was heavily involved with PDC on the proposed haul routes, and we did make some modifications throughout the process to avoid future road closures, as well as to keep haul routes to, as much as possible, mainly paved or collector or arterial status roadways within Weld County. As well as what I just mentioned, a comprehensive road maintenance agreement covering the haul routes identified on this map has been executed by PDC, and it has been approved by the Weld County Board of Commissioners. So the haul routes have been solidified within the Weld County process. The second item, just to bring up, is the emergency action plan. Again, the emergency action plan for the CDP has been approved by not only Weld County Office of Emergency Management, but as you can see here, all relevant local fire districts. You heard from the Platteville-Gilchrist fire chief earlier on, and we appreciate him being on and speaking to his outlook of the process. They were, again, a referral entity, and they were part of an active sign-off process regarding first responder evaluation of the emergency action plan. Before I go on to the next slide, I do want to get into just a little bit more of the hearing details that happened on November 10th. Similar to the pre-app meeting, I'm sure you can imagine if the pre-app meeting lasted all day, then how long was the hearing? Well, the hearing lasted all day as well. So it was a very full day for everybody involved. Ms. Holliday on my team systematically went through not only the high-level items contained within a CDP, but she went through each and every location, followed by PDC also presenting details on each and every location to the hearing officer. There was a thorough discussion about every location, as well as alternates, and the specific details or unique attributes of each. The hearing included the entire CDP boundary, but excluded the 2 City of Greeley locations. And I think that's important to note because the CDP, while it does include 22, Weld County and the hearing officer basically evaluated 20 of the 22 due to City of Greeley having jurisdiction over those 2 that were shown in yellow. As mentioned earlier, the City of Evans was in attendance to voice support. And as Ms. Johnson mentioned as well, Weld County does have a IGA with the City of Evans. So therefore, the one location that was within the City of Evans annexed municipal boundaries was actually a part of our overall evaluation and the hearing officer's decision. Regarding the next steps for CDPs within Weld County, we move to site-specific 1041 requirements. The CDP document is designed to be evergreen in nature, meaning that at the time of submittal, site-specific details, operators must submit information and they must abide by the current code requirements, meaning also that any future code changes will be included or covered with the site-specific submittals. The concept of receiving these documents closer to the time of construction is that should we change any development standards within our code in the future to adapt to changing technology or whatever it might be, that we are holding the operators to the highest standards available at the time. This also allows for the operators to plan for and construct a location that is up to date on current industry best practices and standards without having to come back and sundry the location for technological or operational advances and improvements. We would not want to lock them into an outdated plan when industry advancements have led to improved safety and security. While the approval, recording, and publication of the CDP creates a vested property right, the administrative approval of the site-specific 1041 WOGLA grants the operator the right to actually construct and operate the individual oil and gas location. This allows Weld County the ability to review the changing landscape and to be certain that operators are considering and making accommodations for those changes. For example, today, we have not locked PDC into a specific noise mitigation plan because potentially through the proposal that's in front of you, potentially 7 years from now, there might be new development, new surface development nearby that would warrant greater mitigation efforts that we would then evaluate at the time of that site-specific submittal, and PDC would be bound to. Weld County's CDP process allows for this review and proper land use planning. I also want to make note that, again, going back to the City of Evans, for site-specific submittals, the City of Evans would basically go through this exact same process. So even though the one location that's currently within their boundaries was evaluated at the time of the hearing for the overall CDP and was approved by the hearing officer, the location would still be required to submit site-specific information and follow the same process that I just talked about. As you heard Ms. Johnson say, and as I will echo, Weld County staff will be assisting them with this evaluation and administrative recommendation. And a separate point, a further point would be that the City Council of Evans would then ratify that recommendation and approve the development agreement that the City of Evans would attach to that site-specific location. Comprehensive development plans from the county's perspective make sense for master planning at the local level. We gain further insight into future development plans compared to a single 1041 WOGLA application. This allows us as a team of Weld County departments to analyze land use in a defined area, considering full development plans by the operator. The CDP also creates a public record of full phase development, helping to prevent future land use conflicts. It allows Public Works to comprehensively review the full impact to county infrastructure and work with operators to implement a consolidated road maintenance agreement. CDPs also allow our environmental health department to thoroughly review cumulative impacts regionally and analyze how environmental impacts are being minimized through consolidated operations with knowledge that operators are considering the total impacts of the project and not just considering their impacts for a one-off application today and then another one in 6 months and so forth. CDPs also provide benefit to the operators in Weld County. Not only does it allow for a streamlined submittal process for a single hearing, basically, it provides operators with the assurance of administrative approval on the final site-specific details that are submitted closer to construction. And most importantly, for the operators, it does give an extended time frame to fully develop operations in a defined region, setting them up to better weather tough economic times and political uncertainty by giving the certainty of secured permitting rights. I'm not going to hang on this slide too long. I'd actually like to go ahead and stop screen sharing here in just a second, but I am done with the presentation. However, I do have a few other comments to make. So let me stop screen sharing, and that way I can come up on your screen, I hope. Okay, for some reason it is still not letting me start my video. The host asked me to start.
Perhaps the commissioners will need to just visualize you from previous appearances.
There we go. That might be better because I didn't comb my hair today, commissioners. So those of you who know me know that I keep my hair short and I don't have to comb it for good reason.
I've got you in a baseball cap personally. So
there you go. Okay.
Thanks.
Some real final kind of ad lib comments as I was listening to all the public comment. Thankfully, I had a free morning and I was able to listen to all the public comment and listen to Mr. Sura as well. One item to note in our final order, I do want to say that the hearing officer did put in his final order the commitment from PDC to utilize electric drilling rigs. I know we also heard from many people today, and to be fair, obviously, we had some opposed and we have some in favor of this plan. I want everybody who hopefully is still listening to know that Weld County supports all constructive dialogue when considering oil and gas development. The commission knows that we solicit that. We hope that people and agencies participate in our process. And we will continue to include any and all relevant parties in our land use process. Commissioners, this is master planning. If we look at it from a planning land use standpoint, this is master planning. It greatly helps with future land use proposals in and around the area. If we view it similar to a subdivision or a community master plan, that happens as well at the local level for different land use proposals. And a lot of times what we see happening there is a overall comprehensive plan, which then happens in phases. Why do companies do that? They do that so they have the certainty moving forward for their plan. And they also do that because surrounding land uses can then plan on what that comprehensive plan outlines. So it is a good thing from Weld County's perspective. We heard comments to this effect also from Ms. Johnson with the city of Evans. The third comment would be that there would be major impacts to the local land use process, not just for Weld County, I want to note, but for City of Greeley, for City of Evans and others, if the COGCC does not issue preliminary siting approval for all of the locations contained within this proposal. I would say that Weld County, number one, has approved the CDP and the 20 locations that are within our jurisdiction, including the one within Evans, and that we would therefore request the COGCC to also consider approving this plan in its entirety, along with granting preliminary siting for all of those locations. So all that being said, again, commissioners, thank you very much. Apologies that the video is not working today, but I do appreciate having a little bit more time today because this is a very important plan in front of you. And I know there's going to be a lot more future dialogue. Chair Robbins, as we discussed earlier, this will be one of those to where after I'm offline this time, if there are any questions that come up through the process for Weld County, I would ask that you just shoot me a quick note and I will do my best to leave my afternoon meetings and jump back on here to answer those questions because this is important enough that I want to make sure Weld County provides that local input.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. If you could email that to Ms. Larson, we'll make sure it gets in the record and we'll have ready access to it. Commissioners, at this time, we can ask Mr. Maxey questions. Mr. Maxey, maybe I just still am a little bit confused, but your CDP approval and your location approval is binding at this point. Is that fair? And then what would happen to where Weld would sort of relook at a potential location as it does the WOGLA?
Thank you, Chair Robbins. Yes, short answer, yes, this is binding now. Final order has been issued approving all 20 locations that are within our purview. Obviously acknowledging Greeley has a process for there too. It has been recorded. It has been final noticed. We have followed the process not only in our code, but under state statute for creation of a vested property right, which due to the fact that we systematically went through each and every location and that within the information in front of you and information that was presented to us, a full alternate siting evaluation was done within the materials. From Weld County's standpoint, again, the 20 locations are solidified. What would happen? I think that question would be dependent on who the change came from and why it came from that entity. So hypothetically, if the COGCC did not approve a location, then I think it would put the operator in an awkward spot that the local jurisdiction has approved it and the state has not, and the operator would have to decide their path forward. If the request came from the operator, we would, of course, from our end, make sure that we were in very close discussion with your staff to see if the same request had been made to the COGCC. Because again, we would want to make sure that the land use process is aligned and the location aligns. The worst thing in this whole process is to have differing information at the jurisdictional levels. So if the request came from the operator, we would evaluate what the severity, to use that word, what that severity of change would be. If the request is, we need to pick this location up and move it due to input from this hearing today and the commission, then that would put, again, PDC in an awkward spot with us because we would have to start from scratch for that location. It would not be able to be administratively moved. If it was simply changing some equipment on location, as you all know, we don't get equipment information at the time of the CDP. That is later on in the site-specific submittal. So we wouldn't really see that as a quote unquote change because we didn't get the information in our overall CDP anyway. And so again, we don't want to lock them into today's standards when in 5 years, they could develop a location and it could be vastly different from what they may have requested today. So a smaller change like facility layout or facility equipment, again, is nothing that we would view as major, and we would process that as a minor change within the already approved overall CDP WOGLA.
Thank you. Other commissioners with questions? Commissioner McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Maxey, for going through the process with Weld County. I'm wondering two things. One, if Larimer County reached out to talk to Weld about its concerns over NOx emissions, and it may have been that the timing didn't quite work out when they realized their concerns about the NOx emissions and ozone non-attainment. And then my second question is whether or not there was discussion with Greeley about the locations that are near kind of these small enclaves, these small subdivisions, but a fair number of homes, and whether or not additional BMPs were considered for those locations.
Thank you, Commissioner McGowan. To answer your first question, Larimer County reached out to Weld County. Short answer to that is no, they did not. Now we heard about a Larimer County protest initially to this permit, which then was withdrawn, and then they just provided public comment. We heard about that through the grapevine, and so we were aware of that. I did read through that protest. I did read through the commission's rules about the ability for certain entities to protest and go through that process. So in a roundabout way, we did find out about it, but no, there was never a reach out from Larimer County directly to Weld County at any time of the process. From my calculations on our mapping system, they're greater than 3 miles away. They might be even more than 3.5 miles away. So they don't fit any definition with Weld County or the state's definition of what we would call approximate local government. And therefore, I think that's why they followed your rules and filed under an affected persons designation. One thing I will add to that though, this dialogue is that through contact with the CDPHE, again, Weld County was brought a little bit more into the concern that Larimer County brought up about the numbers potentially not being accurate, which Mr. Sura went through in his presentation. Weld County staff was on at least one meeting, maybe two, with the CDPHE and PDC and other entities to discuss those figures. And so we did participate in those as well, basically just as a listening party to be involved. But we did not provide any substantive information as far as a request for PDC to change anything, because there was kind of that acknowledgement that numbers needed to be re-looked at and modified. Now, discussions with City of Greeley. I might ask for a little bit more clarity on the two locations that you're mentioning, because the two are within City of Greeley. There is development around the areas, and Greeley may have other development plans for their annexed areas. But are you asking about those just general conversations about those two locations and interaction with Greeley, or are you asking about the unincorporated areas that are very close to City of Greeley boundaries that were evaluated as well?
That's a good point. I apologize. I think that maybe some of these questions are relevant to Greeley and the process that they went through, but I think there are, for me, 4 or 5 sites that have numerous RBUs, not just 1 or 2, not just the landowner and their country cousins or their relatives or their neighbor, but small subdivisions. And I'm going to have to pull up, sorry, I have a bunch of documents. I'm going to have to pull up those locations, but specifically, those were brought up in the director's recommendation from staff as areas that they might want additional information. And I'm wondering if you all asked for different additional information for those those locations as well, or had concerns about them.
Okay, yeah, great question. And again, I'm going to refer back to the pre-application process, because again, that is where a lot of the nitty-gritty work came out. And if you know, if any of you would like to ever, I don't know the logistical or legal, I doubt you all could participate or listen to one, because it would be before this process, and I know that probably wouldn't be proper. But I think I could call out the town of LaSalle as a great example about the discussions that happened at the pre-app meeting, and the items, again, that PDC took from that meeting, they evaluated, and then they turned in a better application, ultimately, that is in front of us, or was in front of us, and now is in front of you. The town of LaSalle didn't have any real concerns about the specific location that was to the southwest, which I believe is the Blackburn location. However, they did have concerns, to your point, regarding the timing of some development that was proposed within the town of LaSalle. Hearing that type of discussion, and again, going over all the alternate siting at that time with PDC, and asking LaSalle if they had any better recommendations for alternate locations, things like that. At the end, LaSalle just said, is there any way that location can be brought closer to the top of your action items to develop that location as one of your top locations? And the information that was supplied to us, as well as to you all, I believe, the answer from PDC is yes. They took that information and they said, we are willing to elevate certain locations based on this input that we received at the pre-application meeting, based on the conversations from the community, based on your development plans, your land use plans in your jurisdiction. We are willing to work with the timeframes. And that's just one of the examples. That again, that conversation is how PDC went from 25 locations down to 22 through that pre-application process. And again, I'll just say from my personal perspective and what we look at as a department, getting a location like this known that it's going to be at a specific spot allows surrounding land use to develop more appropriately or more timely based on that local jurisdiction's needs or their comprehensive plans. They might have their own master planning for a certain area. You heard from City of Evans that the area for the Oxford is generally commercial or industrial. Plans like this help assist with future planning of those other items that may or may not come into that certain area. So the LaSalle example is just one to where they did have a housing development that they were looking to build, but there had been no permits filed at that time. But getting something like this solidified so the town now knows that it is on the books, so to speak, helps them greatly with the plans, and as well as their request to elevate that on PDC's timeline so that it's already developed prior to more residential development coming into that area.
Okay, thanks. I'm not quite sure I think we're kind of ships passing each other here a little bit. So for example, the Thera location, which I think is in Weld County, has a small enclave of folks, 17 RBUs. And as you all reviewed the cap and this location, was there discussion about being near 17 RBUs and what additional BMPs you might like to see to be protective of those RBUs?
Commissioner McGowan, you said the Thera, Thera?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, there definitely was those discussions. And excuse me while I pause for just a second here, because I want to get to a certain point on our final order, if I can find it quickly. Number one, there was discussions at the pre-app stage and throughout the discussions leading up to submittal of the final application to Weld County. There was a very thorough discussion about alternate locations based on certain factors, such as in this one here, per your figures, 17 building units within 2,000 feet. Those were also recognized, those specific maybe higher impact areas were recognized during the hearing as well. And from that full day of hearing, there was a lot more time from the hearing officer spent on those locations and talking about PDC about how they were going to identify additional BMPs that would help mitigate any types of factors that were of concern from the hearing officer's perspective as well, being as how there's more building units in a closer proximity. And our hearing did identify precise numbers of building units. I'm sure, again, PDC will identify those to you as well today in their presentation. But we did have those discussions. We did talk about additional concerns or factors, mitigation measures, BMPs, whatever you might call them, for that specific location when we had more receptors in closer proximity to certain locations. It did happen.
Okay, so I think I'm trying to balance out what I thought you said, which was some BMPs have not yet been approved or adopted because you're waiting to see what will happen when we get closer to the actual drilling date. But at the same time, there was consideration of additional BMPs for, I think in particular for Weld County, it would be the Thera site and the Capital site, which has 20 RBUs. And I think the bypass and the Denali are Greeley issues.
Correct.
But it's hard for me to understand if you're saying some BMPs, which we would normally look at as more protective, you actually haven't adopted or approved because you want to wait until you're closer to the drilling date. Then as a commissioner, it's hard for me to understand what additional things you may have asked for those locations that have a larger number of RBUs, for which it is not the surface owner or a tenant or someone who has signed consent. And I'm trying to understand how much more rigor was placed on those specific areas by Weld County in reviewing those specific proposed locations.
Okay. And apologies that we're kind of talking maybe in circles a little bit here. That's not my intent. But going back to the slide in my presentation that used the example for noise. Today, for example, for Thera, per your numbers that you just mentioned, let's say that there's 17. Okay. Today, to lock them into a noise standard when there could be changing surface use items that happen 4 or 5 years down the road. And what if that building unit number increases before they build this location? What if a different surface use impact comes into play? What if a trucking business purchases a property and they do a trucking business through the Weld County land use process, or a dairy? We would evaluate those specific BMPs that are impactful to the surrounding area at the time of that specific site submittal. So we can't and we don't evaluate the site specifics as far as lighting, noise, odor would be another one, in specific detail at the hearing, because we want to, again, be able to consider also the best management practices at that time when they submit their site specific information. So the BMPs really come into place at that site specific submittal so that we can, again, take another look at it, factor in any changes that have happened. And that could also be code changes, keep in mind, legislative changes that have happened in the time period that has passed. And that's why we don't lock them into those specific ones at the CDP stage, because then you're in essence shoehorning them, or maybe you've locked them into a standard that is now substandard. And we don't want to do that either. We want to keep them to the highest standards possible, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think conversely, is a concern like in 7 years, what if there aren't 17 RBUs? What if there's 30? And does that change a decision that you may have made today versus when they start drilling and now there's more RBUs present? So some of these locations in visiting them feel this is someone's agricultural property. It doesn't look like there's going to be development around it based on other things that you see or you are aware of. And some of these seems to have these small subdivisions, and I can't tell if those are subdivisions that are slotted to grow or if they're at their limits, and whether or not there should be kind of this preliminary decision to site it there, or maybe we should wait and have conversation when the time comes up closer to the actual drilling timing to see what kind of development has occurred between now and the actual drilling date. And so I'm just trying to trying to understand a little better Weld County's perspective. And I think that you've addressed my question. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Well, I might just add one more quick thing to those comments. And I definitely 100% appreciate this, because if you're not in this every day, you don't, maybe understand certain factors at the local level versus state level, or versus any type of other development plans that might come up. And that's, in general, for land use, local land use siting. And again, from Weld County's perspective, it is much better to go ahead and have these sightings approved today from a comprehensive master plan, if you will, so to speak, level. If future development happens, this is one of the reasons why we put our hearings and our final orders on record, because if future development happens, you now have an awareness to the public and to the other agencies that are involved that this development has been approved at this location, and it is going to happen. Therefore, for location siting, we think that it's critical to do. For potential BMPs, that's where we don't lock them in right now, and we want to use the best, latest, and greatest at the time of specific approval. But if a subdivision comes on the books from a municipality, we can at least point to that overall comprehensive master plan, if you will, that says there is an awareness there now, and that landowner, that developer, knows that this location was permitted prior, and they will make their own accommodations regarding that land use. So I think from a global view, it's a very good thing to get preliminary siting on these, so that you can evaluate future land uses against what has already been approved. And there's not that conflict. If you don't approve them today, or whenever the plan is in front of you, if we don't approve it, then it's even more of a question mark in the minds of the local jurisdictions and of the neighbors and of the future home buyers or construction, commercial developers. It's even more of a question about not knowing what's going to be beside them. We answer that question right now by approving that. Now we know, we all know, all 5 municipalities, Weld County, the state, we know that that's going there. Other development can plan accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Maxey.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Maxey, for the detailed presentation. I think building off that a little bit, I assume that Weld County similarly does in the way that your group looks at other plans within unincorporated Weld County in addressing potential oil and gas development sites. I'm assuming other parts of the county development also looks at approved siting and making their decisions as to whether to allow a subdivision, whether to permit a dairy, whether to things like that.
Thank you, Commissioner Cross. And the answer is yes. The Oil and Gas Department is a referral agency, internal, but you've heard me talk about referral entities. We are a referral agency for our planning department. So anytime the planning department receives a use by special review permit, a USR, which is not a use allowed by right, it's a use outside the bounds of what's allowed in that zoning district. So it could be, again, a trucking business. It could be a large confined animal feeding operation, a feedlot. It could be a solar facility. We are a referral agency for that development, and we provide the input back to that department to say, be aware of this oil and gas development in and around the parcel in question that you're looking to get a permit issued for. They also go out to any other jurisdictions that is within their rules to submit to. So similarly, how we go outside to municipalities or to CPW or to you all, they also send out external referral requests and to solicit feedback as well. Their process diverges a little bit from ours in the fact that they do have a hearing before the Planning Commission and ultimately the Board of County Commissioners, but regardless, there is a public setting of a hearing for both types of permits. And so, pardon my expansion on my answer to your question. The short answer is absolutely. This 100% assists with other permits that are being evaluated with Weld County to know that certain development is already on the books for a certain area.
Thank you for that. And my only other question is, and I think related to what Commissioner McGowan was asking about as well. So in our process, if if a cap is approved, whether or not there's preliminary siting approval granted, they still have to go through OGDPs for the site-specific level. Is that the same kind of process that you will go through maybe 5-6 years down the road, at which time that's when the BMPs that you're talking about are addressed?
Good question, and hopefully this will be clear. Similar, but not the same. So unlike with you all to where they have to submit a full-blown OGDP permit and all the parts and pieces therein, again, the overall CDP approval takes into account certain high-level universal items, such as the emergency action plan, waste management plan, those items that were listed on the screen for that slide. So it does take into account those high-level pieces that are universal for all locations. So we don't require those again. It's already been ordered. It's already been memorialized in the final recorded order. We do get a volume of site-specific information, including at that time, equipment counts, noise, lighting, specific odor requirements, final drainage requirements, because as you know, Weld County looks at grading and drainage. The approved access permit comes at that site-specific time. So all of that volume of information does come to Weld County, but we don't have them go back through a full-blown submittal due to what's already been approved at the CDP level for us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Messner, then Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Maxey, for being here. I did have a few questions and just some clarifications, I think. I mean, just one, I think it's important to clarify and understand that, you know, irregardless of the local government land use process, which I think you've heard me say multiple times, that Weld County has a strong land use process around oil and gas development, particularly with your WOGLA process. But operators do need to get both a state permit and the local government permit to be able to move forward with their operations. And that the state at times has different considerations that they need to make, broader considerations perhaps than a local government would need to. I mean, would you agree with that?
Commissioner Messner, thank you. Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. They do need both permits, and that there are certain differences between the COGCC permit and Weld County permit. So yes, I agree with that.
All right, thank you. I mean, I think what I'm hearing you say, because again, I think as we look at these CAP processes and your CDP process, I mean, there's probably more differences between our review of our comprehensive area plans or comprehensive development plans, as you call it, than there are with our OGLAs and your 1041 WOGLAs. But I think what I hear you saying is that from a siting perspective, specifically, understanding that there's not site-specific BMPs provided, but that Weld County believes that all of the sites within your jurisdiction can be approved without having to move those sites, because you believe there are some BMPs that could potentially get imposed at some point in the future that would meet your requirements to be protective, or whatever your standards are. Is that what you're ultimately saying?
Yes, I am, Commissioner Messner, and I think that bleeds over potentially into you all's consideration as well. For example, I'll hit lighting again as one of the ones that we don't require definitive information at this stage because it's too premature. To lock them into something today, we very well could find a remote or a more remote location that doesn't have any receptors in close proximity, certainly not within 2,000 feet per your rules or per our rules. And we might very well say, you know, this is a undeveloped area. We think it needs to be, you know, a different lighting zone due to the undeveloped nature of the area. If development happens, as we talked about earlier, and different land uses come in, that very well could changed our evaluation of that certain BMP or that certain development standard within our permit. And why would we want to have locked them in prior when certain changes could influence a BMP 3 or 4 years from now? So one like that is a good example about why we choose to not have that item locked in, so to speak, but why, again, the siting is important to lock in so that we can take that into account for other land use around the area.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why. I think my point is that if I use a little bit of maybe look at it a little different way, I think what I'm hearing you say is that you believe that there is existing BMPs that are available right now that can make these sites protective, because in your process, you're not able to move the sites after you approve it.
I believe that through our process for this development in particular, that yes, the applicant has proven with the information provided and through the process of Will County, including the hearing officer's testimony that he required of staff and of the applicant and the thorough evaluation of what was provided. I believe that each and every location has proven that they can be compatible with the surrounding land uses and can be approved.
Okay. And then, so I have just a couple of questions specifically. And I believe these are in Weld County, but correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, when you went through your CDP process, you didn't have the benefit of the comprehensive area plan, wildlife mitigation plan. So the whole thing that came out in November, is that correct?
Was that submitted as part of our application? No.
Okay. And there was consultation with CPW in your pre-application meeting, and then a referral. We received a referral from CPW, or a consultation. I think it was dated November 18th, which I believe would have been after your review, that reemphasized that there was a couple of sites. I think it's the Denali site and the bypass site, that the first choice, because of bald eagles specifically and some of the concerns around bald eagles, was to avoid those because they're not mitigatable. And so understanding that, perhaps you didn't have that information when you made the decision, but I think what I'm hearing CPW say, and we'll talk with Brandon Moret about that at some point when he provides comments, and certainly we'll talk to the operator as they provide comments. But there is perhaps some consideration that may be had for shifting some of those sites to ensure they're outside of that half-mile buffer. But your process, did it consider that? Did it not consider that? Did it not have the information? I mean, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Mester. And it's a big question. And so I'll try to make sure I address everything. If I miss something, please let me know. First item to note is that both of those locations, the bypass and the Denali, I believe that you're referencing, are both the locations within the city of Greeley.
Okay.
So therefore, if they had to shift anything, I can't be the authority on the answering of what would the process be, because that'd be a city of Greeley jurisdiction question. Did we have discussions? Absolutely. Again, these two locations, that's why Greeley was invited, and we had everybody there at the table to talk at the pre-app stage. Was confirmation of eagles nests in the area identified? Yes, it was. Back in April of 2022 at our pre-app meeting, that was identified. Mr. Moret was there, and I see he's on the agenda for later on. And so I would value his input into this as well. But the CPW was fully engaged in this process and in the acknowledgement of certain factors around each and every one of these locations within this plan. And we can point to the Oxford. I know we're getting off topic from the two you referenced, but we can point to the Oxford as, again, the process works. CPW had questions about that location. that location changed drastically from PDC's original proposal to the one that's in front of you today. Due to those comments at the pre-app stage, it allowed for proper planning. And this doesn't just go for CPW or the COGCC, but for anybody who's a part of our meeting. We don't, our meeting, meaning the pre-application meeting, to allow for proper planning and location siting. We don't accept an answer like, well, we recognize this item here that might be of concern. We'll have offline conversations about this location. We don't allow that. And through the pre-app meeting for this proposal, we had a couple times to where we had to bring it back home and say that. This is the time to have these conversations so that the jurisdictions in the room can hear them and we can move from here with proper planning for the future. So hopefully that answers that question, but overwhelmingly, those two are City of Greeley, and we'd have to defer for them for if they had to shift, quote unquote.
No, I appreciate that. And I apologize for conflating the proximate local government and the local government, the relevant local government on those in my notes. So the Oxford, for example, in this particular situation, there has been some recommendations around timing steps, but that would be one of those situations where you feel like from Weld County's perspective, you would be able to approve the site, but the timing steps or something like that may be considered at a future review. Is that right?
100%. Because the appropriate parties are involved. They have been involved. They are having those conversations regarding timing steps. And again, we don't have particular timing steps as long as they abide by our code requirements and the items from like CPW or from yourself or from CDPHE requirements are another good one to mention. We allow that to be flexible dependent on that agency's request. Similar to air quality, where the CDPHE is the primary reviewer and they handle air quality permits. Our code, while we acknowledge that and while we talk to the operator about high ozone days, for example, the ultimate authority right now rests with the CDPHE, and our code simply states you will follow that specific permit and those rules. And it's just an acknowledgement. So when they agree to Weld County's standards, they in essence are agreeing to the other standards. Similar for CPW, our code says that they will follow the high priority habitat CPW wildlife mitigation plan per your rules, because you have rules about a wildlife mitigation plan, and we just refer to that. So therefore those timing steps and those items for the Oxford location in particular, if we stay on that one, they will be followed by default through our code anyway, because we simply say, as one of our development standards, you have to follow this other agency's guidelines, which they are agreeing to, and they did agree to in this case.
All right. I appreciate your responses to my questions, Mr. Maxey. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Messer.
Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Maxey. Appreciate your presentation and your responses to the questions. Some of my questions were answered by your previous responses, so I won't go back and ask those again, but I did want to touch on the RBU issue, recognizing from your point of view that the local government often is dialed in more acutely to land uses that are in proximity to the homes of their residents, and I recognize that. I also recognize that there were some disproportionately impacted communities. And what I heard in your response, I just am looking for one clarification or maybe one extrapolation or explanation that you talked about, potential BMPs on these sites, particularly those that are close to a number of RBUs, which honestly was of a large concern to me as well as commissioners before me. And your response was that there was a lot of operational discussion, a lot of agency planning, a lot of talk about future BMPs that will be in place on a site-by-site basis, which I think is all good. And also, significant talk about the importance of master planning and that this is what it looks like. And I would agree with you 100% in that case that, it does inform and create opportunities for future development to plan around existing development. But I didn't hear a lot of talk, and I may have missed it in your response about reaching out to the potentially impacted, already existing homeowners on those sites that do have multiple RBUs within 2,000 feet. And I know PDC has reached out to them. I'm not sure if Weld County reaches out individually to those homeowners as well, or they work through the operator process of reaching out to those homeowners. So can you talk a little bit more about your comfort level with regard to the proximity of those sites that do have multiple RBUs within existing homes, and the outreach that's been done, and Weld County's comfort level with development on those specific sites?
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman. I guess my short answer would be I have 100% comfort with the process up to this point. And apologies if I didn't mention it in great enough detail, or if I skipped too fast on the slide, but recall that Weld County did send out notification of this hearing to over 300 people. Now, again, we look at the definition of building unit, and we have a similar building unit definition as you all, sort of. The addition is that we also consider commercial or industrial facilities that are occupied for business. So it could be a warehouse, it could be an office building that's a commercial office building. Those are not a building unit under your definition. They are for us. So those entities also get notification. Keep in mind also that we don't just send them out to building units, but property owners. So if a property owner is within 2,000 feet of one of these locations, but their home is not, or a home is not, then they still got notification. So I'm 100% confident in the process, and that everybody that needed to get notification did get notification. Above and beyond that, again, PDC will get into this, but they sent out notification of community meetings to thousands of people within the entirety of the boundary, I believe. So coupled with the fact that they sent out their notice, we sent out our notice for our process, I think that the appropriate parties, honestly, were abundantly notified.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Maxey. I appreciate that. And I did note your slide on the notifications of your hearings to affected residents. So I appreciate you talking about that again. My second kind of point here, I think, is, certainly the proximity to RBUs is a discussion that we're having amongst our crowd here, but wasn't one that came up highly in the public comment previous to your presentation. The public comments were, as you heard and noted, were largely centered around air quality and specifically ozone. And I wanted to kind of get Weld County's response to some of those ozone concerns that have been brought up with regard to this CAP development, and specifically Weld County's thoughts on Larimer County's suggestions to help mitigate those impacts. And I can reiterate those if needed.
No, I appreciate it, Commissioner Ackerman. I think that basically, if we talk about Larimer County's ask, it was simply that PDC not do completeness or completions operations on high ozone days, if I recall in general what theirs was. And I will say that through our process, that is an acknowledgement that the operator is asked from our hearing officer as well, even though, again, we're not the authority on air quality issues or permits because we defer to the CDPHE for those. We do ask the question in hearing, and the question generally, I'm paraphrasing here, but it usually is in line with what is the operator's plan for high ozone alert days? And the operator will talk about their plan, and a lot of times it is we will curtail development on those days, or sometimes they say, no, we won't, because they're right in the middle of completions. That again would be a PDC answer for them to clarify. But in general, that's kind of a nebulous question for me to answer, because we do just default to the CDPHE's requirements and to their permits and to their allowable limits for emissions and things like that. So our staff doesn't really get too deep into that information, but there are some general high level questions that are asked in the application that they will abide by our broad development standards in our code, which again point back to the ultimate jurisdiction in this case for air quality, which is CDPHE.
Thank you, Mr. Maxey. I appreciate that. And we'll likely have more of this discussion with the operator and maybe more appropriate there. Just for the record and for the note, Larimer's requests were to have all fracking be through electric means or have those done outside of the period of June 1st to August 31st, rather than just monitor ozone high days, which I also think is a very important strategy. So I appreciate you pointing that out. And I just, more of a comment than a question that, you know, as Larimer County pointed out, there's, you know, quite a bit of gas development, oil and gas development, as we all understand, in Weld County. And the emissions therefrom do migrate into other counties. And so I was interested in hearing Weld County's thoughts in general on that. And so sorry for the esoteric nature of my question. I appreciate that you do have codes in place that do help regulate those activities. So thank you for your comments, and that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Great. All right, Mr. Maxey, thank you for being with us, for the presentation, for answering the questions. And I will keep you on speed dial if we need to have a question of you as we go through the remaining parts of this application, if you're comfortable with that.
Yes, absolutely comfortable with that. Chair Robbins, thank you for doing that, as it is a busy afternoon, but I will definitely jump out of those meetings and come back on here if there's any few clarifications needed. And I just do want to take a minute. I think this is probably the most lengthy time that I've been on one of your hearings. And again, apologies for the video not working. I'm not sure why it's not today, but that being said, just please note that we do really appreciate being a part of the process. We appreciate coming on, talking about the Weld County items that we review and the interaction and engagement with COGCC and your staff, along with other jurisdictional entities. These are important decisions, and we want to make sure we provide, hopefully, the best and most relevant information to your questions and to your process as well. So we do greatly appreciate our relationship, and thank you all very much.
Great. Thank you as well, Mr. Maxey. All right, commissioners, it is 12:46. We have a lengthy presentation from PDC next. I would suggest we take a lunch break, take a break to get out and walk around and get ready for a long afternoon. I'd like to suggest we take a 44-minute break as opposed to a 30 and show back up at 1:30. Is there any objection to that? That'll give you time to not only make a sandwich, but perhaps walk around the block. All right, seeing no objection. 1:30, we will return.